The story starts off with a goblin in a goblin cave, laughing and excitedly saying the chief's weapon is his now, and now he's the chief. Another goblin, who was searching through the previous chief's belongings, yells at him saying nonsense. He's talking nonsense. Then he lunges at him saying he's the new chief, and bites onto his nose telling him to go to hell. At that, the other goblin screams in pain. After that, the attacker goblin beats him down to the ground, and the injured goblin finds no way to fight back, while other goblins gather around them and start cheering them on to keep fighting. But then, one of them tells the other goblins beside him with a mischievous look on his face, "Prey, the chief left some untouched prey, so they should go take it back." But the other guys tell him that the guy guarding the prey is about to return, and right then, they get startled, as the goblin they're talking about, the one who looks quite different from the others, returns and walks toward another part of the cave. All the other goblins there stare at him and say that it's him, he's the one guarding the prey. They call him a disgusting creature, as he covers his body like a human. They discuss among themselves, saying that he's definitely going to keep the prey for himself. So the goblins decide that they should follow him and take the prey away, while the different goblin keeps moving forward, without paying heed to their words. But then, one of the goblins stops the others and tells them to wait a bit longer, as some guys already went to find the prey earlier. He explains that they're tough guys, so once they start fighting, they will go. Hearing that, the different goblin worriedly thinks, damn it. Then he starts running as he hears a girl screaming for help and telling someone not to touch her. After that, the goblin enters a cave, as the girl keeps calling out loud for someone to save her and screams she doesn't want to give birth to goblin children, as other goblins try to violate her. The threatened girl keeps on crying, telling them to stop, begging for someone to help her, as the goblins around her tear apart her clothes, holding her tight. Right then, the different goblin yells at them and tells them to let her go, and seeing him, the other goblins irritatedly say it's him again, this freak. One of them tells the outlier that the chief is dead, so this prey is his, and furiously adds, if he dares to take his prey, then he shouts at him to die. As all the goblins start rushing toward the different goblin with a ferocious look on their faces, saying, kill him. They all lunge at him together, making him fall to the ground and start hitting him, which badly hurts the different goblin, and he frustratedly thinks, these damn goblins. As the goblins start tearing his clothes and biting into his body, he thinks he can't believe even these low-level goblins are too much for him. But then, he determinedly thinks, no, he can't die there, he has to survive. And immediately, one of the enemy goblins gets cut down and dies. Seeing that, the other goblins get frightened and slowly step back, as they find the outlier standing there with a knife in hand. The different goblin understands that if he doesn't leave, he will die, so instead, he aims his blade at the other goblins and furiously tells them to die, which terrifies them. Then they quickly try to escape from him, shouting, run, he has a weapon, and the different goblin infuriatedly tells them to just wait. After that, as the other goblins escape, the girl goes up to him worriedly asking if he's okay and thanks him for saving her again. She tells him that he didn't harm her and kept protecting her. He really is a different kind of goblin, so she requests him not to die. Hearing that, the goblin frustratedly thinks, a different kind of goblin, but he recalls that he was once a human too, and seems sad. He woke up in this world with the sound of a goblin shouting, boss, he's alive. But he didn't expect that instead of meeting God after being hit by a dump truck, he'd be transported to another world with a system. The goblin found that although he has a system, it still hasn't fully activated. Other than being able to see some stats, it doesn't seem to have any other functions. However, he hasn't been idle these past few years. From what this woman has told him, he has gained some understanding of this world. The goblin understands that this world created by gods has various powerful monsters, and humans have carved out their place on this continent with their strength. But the goblin he reincarnated as it's the weakest and most filthy monster in this world. Also, the goblin realizes that his stats are really low, even among the goblins, so he could be easily killed. As he sits on a rock and opens the system menu, which shows his name, Lin Tian, race goblin, level 5, class none. HP, strength, defense, and other stats really low, and overall combat power 30. But Lin knows that there's a way to get stronger, and he looks at the girl thinking, that's to mate with these girls. He understands that goblins have the ability to get stronger through constant mating and reproduction, but they have no females. So to reproduce, they can only mate with other female creatures, which is why they constantly plunder. But he used to be a human, so he finds doing such things really unsettling. Seeing him sad, the girl tells him not to worry, as after spending these days with him she understands now She excitedly says he's very different and asks if it isn't right that he really doesn't want to live with these goblins. Hearing that, Lin surprisedly looks at her but remains silent. Then the girl tells him not to worry, as when the Night Order comes to rescue him, she'll tell them he saved her. The Night Order is always fair and just, they will definitely agree to let him live in the village. Lin thinks she's not wrong, even if the system can't activate, as long as he holds out until the humans come to rescue them and gains their protection. He can survive first and then slowly figure out how to activate it. But at that moment, they get startled to hear loud screams of goblins coming from another part of the cave and hurriedly look toward the entrance. Lin thinks, damn it, those goblins are coming back, so he tells the girl to hide first, and she says okay. After that, one of the goblins comes running there injured, and desperately saying human is there, he wants to mate, getting stronger means not getting killed. Hearing that, Lin understands that humans are there, then he swings his blade at the goblin's neck and kills him in an instant. After that, he calls the girl and tells her that it looks like the humans are there to rescue her, and the girl excitedly asks if really. She hurriedly runs toward the entrance saying it must be the Holy Order, great, they should go check. And Lin goes after her. Right then, they find a knight in shining armor using his skill sword Kai Slash to cut down a bunch of goblins there in one swing, which astonishes Lin. After that, the knight looks back at his cape and frustratedly says these filthy creatures, they tore his holy uniform. While Lin checks his status and finds that his name is Loader, his level 25, class swordsman, has much higher stats and skills than him, overall combat power of 400. Lin surprisedly thinks it's the first time he has seen such high stats since he came there, so he wonders if this really is a human. Then the girl excitedly runs toward the knight, calling him commander, and tells him that they're there, and the knight looks at her, while Lin finds it impressive that they easily dealt with those goblins. But then, he thinks no, wait, as Loader takes up his sword and is about to swing it at the girl. While the girl seems shocked, Lin quickly runs toward her and pushes her out of the way, telling her to watch out, as Loader swings his sword. The two fall on the ground and find it hurting. Then Lin immediately gets back up, worriedly wondering if they're there to rescue people. So why they're attacking? If it's because the cave is too dark and he mistook this girl for a goblin. After that, Loader looks at the girl and says with a disgusted look on his face, it's a disgrace that a goblin dodged his attack. The girl desperately calls him and tells him that it's her. She's Kelia. Then Loader yells at her to shut up, as he knows it's her. But she's been defiled by goblins. She might even be carrying a goblin's spawn. It's ridiculous for a filthy thing like her to expect mercy from him. So he tells her to go repent for her sins to the Great Holy Mother. Hearing that, Kelia crawls up to his feet and cries, telling him to wait, as although she was captured, she wasn't defiled by the goblins. She adds that it was him. She points at Lin and tells Loader that this goblin protected her, and the knight looks at Lin, the goblin. But then he proceeds to swing his sword at Kelia, furiously telling her if she's going to make up stories, to at least make them believable, as he asks if she takes him for a fool, and yells at her to meet her end with these lowly creatures. Hearing that, Lin hurriedly starts running toward Kelia, thinking he can't believe it. Then he pushes her back and tells her to run. There's an exit that way, so to get out of there, while he grabs a club and heads forward to fight Loader, frustratedly thinking he didn't expect this outcome. But right then, a bright light flashes there, as a woman shows up and tells Loader to wait, while Lin seems shocked to find himself trapped in a magic sphere. The woman, wearing a saintess's attire, examines Lin using magic and says this goblin seems a bit strange, as the other knights also reach there and stand behind her. Seeing the woman, Kelia surprisedly calls her holy maiden and beggingly tells her to save her. She goes up to her as she keeps on asking her to save her, and the holy maiden gladly takes her in her arms. After that, she leaves her with Loader and turns toward Lin, calling him Goblin. She asks him if he can understand her words. Lin understands that she is the holy maiden Ifraya, the spokesperson of the temple they talked about, and if he wants to leave there, this might be his only hope. So he hurriedly says he can. He asks her if she isn't the holy maiden they mentioned, and tells her that he's actually not a monster of that world. He used to be human. He became like this because of an accident, and he can explain everything if he goes with them, which surprises everyone there. Loader tells Ifraya that it does seem smarter than those goblins. It's quite rare. Ifraya agrees and says goblins are usually stupid and lowly creatures. They can't speak and think so fluently, so he might be a gift from the Holy Mother. She asks Kelia if this goblin really didn't hurt her, and Kelia tells her yes, not only did he not hurt her, but he also protected her from other goblins and gave her food. Then Ifraya tells her alright, since it's so special, they should take it back first, and they'll study it thoroughly before making a decision. which makes Kelia really excited. Ifraya looks at Lin and asks him if he's willing, and Lin tells her that he's willing to go with them. After that, Ifraya frees him from the magic sphere, which surprises him, and tells Loder, okay, then they should go. Loder says he understood as he helps Kelia walk forward. Lin also starts walking out of the cave with them, thanking the Holy Maiden for her kindness and telling her that he will repay her properly. But then, Ifraya says, of course, and right at that moment, Loder shoves his sword right into Kelia's stomach. Hearing that sound, Lin stops in his tracks. After that, he tremblingly turns back to see what happened, and gets shocked to find Kelia fallen dead on the ground. Ifraya tells Lin with a devilish look on her face that when they get back, he better repay him well, while Lin keeps trembling in fear, and doesn't understand what to do. 1 week later, at a village nearby, the village bell rings, and quite a lot of villagers gather at the village square, as Loder calls them children of God and tells them that this goblin raid has brought great harm to Bright Town. He adds that the goblins use despicable sneak attacks to slaughter 30 residents of Bright Town. Hearing that, the villagers all rile up and furiously curse the goblins. They say, blood for blood, an eye for an eye. The Loder tells them that humans and goblins are mortal enemies. However, the Holy Order, on behalf of the temple, has purged these goblins and avenged the harmed villagers. After that, the Holy Maiden steps forward and tells the villagers to continue to pray devoutly to the temple, as the temple will always protect her devout followers. Hearing that, the villagers start cheering, saying, "Long live the knights, long live the temple." Sometime later, Ifraya is in her office, as she releases a sigh and says that Day's sermon was a success. They're as foolish as ever. She looks at a vial filled with some kind of potion in her hand and says with a yearning look on her face, now they will pray even more devoutly to the temple and offer more tributes. At that moment, Lin exhaustedly calls her Ifraya, and the Holy Maiden annoyedly looks back at him. She finds Lin looking at her with raging anger in his eyes and calls her a dog, as his whole body is deformed with injuries and some of his body parts are out. Then Ifraya says, still alive, such strong vitality, no wonder the temple can't eradicate goblins from the continent. After that, she gets up and looks around saying, this time, they should see how poison affects goblins. Seeing her ignorance toward what he's saying, Lin furiously yells at her saying she deceived him, deceived everyone, and killed Kelia. This is her holy order, this is her so-called justice. Right then, Ifraya shoves a sharp piece of branch straight inside his mouth, causing him immense pain. The Holy Maiden infuriatedly says how strange, a weak and trashy creature like him, a desireful goblin, dares question human justice. She tells him that Kelia was bewitched by him and dared to speak for him. That's a betrayal of humanity, and the Holy Order, and her death was her final loyalty. She adds with an evil smile on her face that goblins are nothing more than vermin on this continent, and for the Holy Maiden to speak to him is a great favor. Ifraya continues telling him that he should be grateful and use his small, disgusting body to contribute to human and holy order, as she raises her hand in Lin's direction, and hits him with an insanely powerful holy magic, which causes Lin immeasurable pain, but he doesn't even have the strength to scream. Then, he starts to lose consciousness and wonders if he's going to die, but he's so unwilling. Lin understands that it's all his fault. He's too foolish, reincarnated from a human to a low-level goblin. He foolishly held on to human compassion, thinking they were righteous and kind. Weakness and naivety were his deadliest mistakes, and after being taken back to the human village, Loder and Ifraya tortured and toyed with him in every possible way, never believing a word he said. Lin sadly thinks that he didn't last long, being toyed to death by a dog. So if he could do it again, he would never trust humans. If he could do it again, he would definitely grind their bones and drain their blood, as everything around him turns dark as he dies. Lin keeps thinking, if he could live again, then suddenly, he regains consciousness and gets surprised to find himself in an unknown place. He looks at his body and wonders if he's still alive, where this place is. Then he sees the system saying, the Goblin Life Simulation System has been activated, evaluation complete. He's dead. He forgot he was a goblin. Humans will never trust nor pity goblins. So he died being tortured and tormented, and the pain is imprinted on his soul. His end is one of the worst, so if he wants to start over. Seeing that, Lin wonders if this is the system, if this is his personal system, and understands that it activates only after death. Also, he questions if this system can bring him back to life, but he says it seems he will be reborn again as the lowest creature, a goblin. Then Lin asks the system what yes and no represent, and the system explains that if he chooses no, his soul will dissipate and die completely. But if he chooses yes, he'll retain his current memory and system and be sent back to the Goblin Cave a week ago, which surprises Lin. Then he smiles and says he gets it now. He understands that this is a chance for revenge, and he must get revenge on Loader and Ifraya. So then, Lin presses the yes button on the system with a crazy look on his face, as the only thing in his mind is revenge. His eyes burn with rage and determination as the system notifies him that Goblin Life 2.0 begins, transferring to Goblin Cave. The system also notifies him that to help him survive a bit longer, it has slightly strengthened him. Lin amusedly says it really is just a little bit, but it's better than nothing, he guesses, as he finds himself back at the Goblin Cave he was a week before. But then, the system warns him that although he has been reborn, the danger is not over. The human holy order is about to reach him, and if he dies again, the system will not be able to revive him. Seeing that, Lin irritatedly thinks it's as expected, the order is about to arrive, and he can't let his guard down. So then, he asks the system what it can do, and the system says that this system is called the Goblin Life Simulation System. He can simulate his life with this system to foresee future events. It adds that every choice he makes will lead to different outcomes, and each simulation requires 24 hours. After the simulation ends, he will earn points, which can be exchanged for items. Lin finds the simulation amazing and says that means he can see the future, so he tells the system to start the life simulation immediately. After that, the system says, current scenario, escape the Goblin Cave. The Goblin Cave he's in has been discovered by the Holy Knight Loader, and to escape from him, he needs to make the following choices, and gives 3 options: warn fellow goblins and unite to face Loader and his men, 10 points, abandon other goblins and escape, 5 points, hide in the cave and pray Loader and his men don't find him, 0 points. Lin understands that although there are 3 options, he's sure even if all the goblins in the cave unite, they can't match Loader alone, so only escaping can save him. Still, he chooses the first option, thinking he'll simulate it first and choose the option with the highest score, as if he can exchange for a weapon, he might defeat them with a sneak attack. Then the system shows the result, saying he led the goblins in a desperate battle against Holy Knight Loader, but due to the large gap in strength, he was still slain by Loader and his men. He overestimated the goblins' strength. Seeing that, Lin thinks just as he thought, relying on the goblins there is impossible to survive. But he got the points. Then he tells the system with a smile to open the exchange shop, and immediately, a shop window opens up around him with a bunch of powerful looking weapons. Looking at all of them, Lin surprisedly says there are so many weapons to exchange, but his points are too low. Then he finds an elven lightweight swift blade, which increases speed by 10%, and strength by 15 points, and says this dagger costs exactly 10 points. So he buys it. Immediately it materializes in his hand, increasing his stats, and he says what a sharp dagger. It's worlds apart from Goblin's weapons. If he hit a vital spot, it could be a one-hit kill. But then, Lin remembers something. He calls the system and asks why he didn't see Kelia, where she went. The system explains that due to his rebirth, some timeline details have changed. In this timeline, Kelia was not captured by goblins and continues to live happily in the village, which surprises Lin. Then he gladly says he understands. It looks like he fulfilled his promise to Kelia, and in that case, he has no more concerns. After that, Lin turns toward one of the exits, thinking he must escape and survive. This is the narrowest passage, and the entrance outside is smaller, so the guards will be relatively weaker. Meanwhile, there are 2 knights standing outside. One tells the other that these goblins are really disgusting, and the other knight tells him to hang in there, as this job is already pretty easy for them. As Lin reaches the mouth of the cave, he thinks he hears something, and quickly takes cover behind a wall of the cave. He hears one of the knights say that this entrance is small, so any goblin that runs out is trash, and he can crush it with one hammer. The other knight tells him not to forget that any girl who tries to escape in the chaos must be killed, and they can't let this reach the village. The previous knight annoyedly says he got it, and tells him to stop nagging. Hearing that, Lin furiously thinks, damn holy order, for their rule, they even kill innocent people of their own kind, let alone a goblin like him. He understands that he has no choice but to fight, so he holds his nose tightly with one hand to mimic a girl's voice, and calls for help, screaming she's a girl from Bright Town, captured by goblins. Hearing that, one of the knights excitedly says, oh here she comes, and the other knight tells him to kill this strangler, as Lord Loader will reward him. After that, the previous knight enters the cave hiding a knife behind his back, telling the voice to come out and not be afraid, as he's from the knights. He's there to take her back. Right then, Lin hits his head with his dagger from behind and kills him in an instant. After that, he points his dagger at the other knight and rushes toward him, telling him to come on, calling him a human. Finding the knight not moving, the other knight walks toward him with his sword in hand, asking him what he's dawdling for, and tells him to hurry up. Hearing that, Lin smiles and then starts pushing the knight he just killed toward the other knight, which startles the other knight as he asks what's going on. After that, Lin pushes away the dead knight and lunges at the other knight, trying to attack him with his dagger. The knight gets surprised to see that it's a goblin and tries to defend himself. However, Lin manages to land a deep cut on his chest, which severely hurts the knight, and he falls to the ground. Then he frightenedly asks if he can actually speak human language and requests him to spare him. He requests him to let him go. The knight shows him a picture of his wife holding his daughter and desperately tells Lin that he has a family, a daughter, and they're all waiting for him to come home. He adds that he's so smart, so he must understand that he's just following orders from the Holy Order. He was forced to come there. The knight also says that he'll give him another bag of gold coins, yes, and a young girl. He'll bring him a fresh and juicy human girl. He desperately tells Lin to consider the benefits he's offering. At that moment, he excitedly thinks there's an opening. It's distracted, as he hurriedly takes out a blade from behind him and rushes toward Lin, calling him a stupid beast, and telling him to die. But then, he gets shocked to find his head flying off of his body, as Lin rushes past him in an instant and cuts his head off swiftly using his dagger. After that, as he puts the two knights' dead bodies together, he sees flashes of light coming from a distance and hears some noises. He understands that it's Loder's voice and they're chasing after them. So then, he takes one of the dead knight's clothes and leaves that place saying, they'll meet again soon, Loder, Ifraya. Sometime later, Loder and Ifraya come to that spot, and Loder checks on the fallen knights, finding traces of goblins on the body. He irritatedly questions what's going on, if there could be goblins that slipped through the net. Hearing that, Ifraya asks if it isn't right that a goblin that can kill those two must be a mutant. Loder tells her yes, it must be a mutant, and if it escaped, that's not a good sign. Then he gets on his feet and kicks one of the dead bodies frustratedly saying, can't even handle a single mutant goblin, and calls them useless. However, Ifraya erotically says a mutant goblin must be really fun, so if they can catch it, she'll definitely have a lot of fun with it. After a while, as it gets dark, Lin finds himself deeper into the forest and manages to distance himself quite a bit from the goblin cave. Then he sits down on the ground wearing human clothes and releases a sigh, as he says he finally survived. He moats an apple, thinking since they all hate goblins so much, he'll deal with them in the goblin way. Goblins have the trait of upgrading through mating and devouring, so he decides that while increasing his stats, he'll breed stronger offspring and expand his influence. In this life, he'll make every man's only desire to be deaf, and make every woman cry and wail under his feet. But right then, he hears a rustling sound from some bushes near him and hurriedly covers his head, irritatedly wondering if it could be that Loder and his group haven't given up on hunting him. Then he rushes in that direction, holding his dagger in hand, thinking to strike first to gain the upper hand, and suddenly seeing him coming, the person there stuttering asks who's there. The person stumbles on a rock and yelps as she falls to the ground, frightenedly trying to step back, and Lin gets surprised to find that it's a goblin. He also finds it surprising that it can talk, as the other goblin accidentally hits his leg, making him fall to the ground as well. Lin irritatedly tries to get back up as he finds it hurting, but then he gets even more surprised by something. The other goblin says it hurts, while Lin wonders why it has female characteristics. As far as he knows, goblins are only males, that's why they can only reproduce by mating with other species. Then, the female goblin hurriedly gets up and requests him not to hurt her, she was just there to fetch water. Hearing that, Lin wonders what's going on, how this goblin can speak complete sentences. He checks the system and learns that it's a female goblin level 3, with really low physical stats, and if a male goblin mates with a female goblin, then the male goblin will become the legendary Goblin God. Lin gets astonished to hear that and wonders what if mating with her can make him a Goblin God, as he thoughtfully keeps staring at her. Seeing that, the female worriedly tells him that she was really sent by the chief to fetch water, and if she doesn't get water, the chief will beat her to death, as she starts crying. Hearing that, Lin nervously tells her that he's sorry. he didn't mean to, and hurriedly pats her on her shoulder, telling her there, not to cry, as he understands that if she keeps crying, she'll attract Loader and his group. Then the female stops crying and amazedly asks him if he can talk too. Lin gladly tells her, of course. He thinks that's right, normal goblins can't talk, so she probably hasn't talked much with other tribe members, and gets up on his feet. But then, the female grabs his clothes. She bashfully tells him that he's so kind. Other goblins just hit and scold her. This is the first time someone has cared for her so gently, so she asks if he has nowhere to go, why he doesn't go back to her tribe. Lin gets surprised by that. Then he hastily grabs both her shoulders and asks if there's a goblin tribe nearby. He thinks they can't be sure if Loader and his group are still following. But this isn't the time to mate, the priority is to find a safe place, while the female's face turns red seeing him hold her, and she tells him yes, she'll take him there. Hearing that, Lin thinks with a wide grin on his face that he was just worried about where to recruit subordinates, and tells the female to take him to her tribe. After that, the female goblin takes him to the goblin village, and seeing Lin, the goblins there come out of their tents with weapons in hand and gather in front of them. They make fun of him, asking why he's wearing human clothes. They've never seen such a weird creature. This freak brought him back, and they laugh out loud. The female worriedly stands behind Lin, and Lin thinks there are quite a lot of goblins in this tribe, so he should start there. He tells them that he's there to join them, and to let him see their leader. Hearing that, the goblins keep laughing as they ask if an outsider wants to see the boss. They say that the boss isn't someone he can see just because he wants to. They should catch him first and then take him to the boss as they aim their spears at him. But then, the female screams, saying he's not a bad guy, so she tells them not to act rashly and stands in front of Lin, which surprises him. After that, someone asks what they're all gathered there for. Lin gets alert looking at the person, while the goblins laugh and excitedly say that the boss is there. Lin checks the system and finds that it's a big goblin level 25, class priest, title breeding machine, really high physical stats compared to Lin, and overall combat power of 200. The boss furiously asks who's making all the noise, and Lin seems worried to find that there's a goblin with such a high level in this tribe. Then the goblin boss asks the female what she's doing with the outsider she brought back, and the female stutteringly tells him yes, she brought him back, as he has nowhere to go. Hearing that, the boss excitedly says good, and orders the others to kill this freak and eat him. The other goblins laugh and say great, meat to eat him, as they rush toward Lin, aiming their weapons at him and pushing the female out of the way. Right then, Lin takes out his dagger and shows it to them, telling them to wait, he can make weapons, so to let him join them, as he can make them stronger. Immediately, the goblin boss raises his hand and tells everyone to wait. After that, he walks up to Lin to examine him unclose. He goes up to his face to sniff him and tells him that he doesn't smell like he's lying, so he asks what kind of weapons he can make. Lin explains that as long as they find iron ore, he can make simple iron tools. He tells him to give him some time, and he can make even better weapons than the one he has. He understands that the priest can also speak complete sentences. It seems the higher the level of the goblin, the smarter they are, as he continues that with iron tools they can defeat monsters or humans. Hearing that, the boss laughs and excitedly says, with iron tools, they don't fear humans. Great, meat to eat, more than humans he prefers elves. With iron tools, they go north and mate with elves. So then, he says alright, he'll give him this chance. He tells Lin to find iron ore and make iron tools within 3 days, and he'll spare his life, and if he can't, he'll kill him. And her, as the boss points at the female goblin, which worries her. Then they continue laughing and return back to their tents. After that, Lin holds the female close, irritatedly thinking this old guy is really ruthless. He'll go mad and even kill his own kind. He can't confront him head on with his current strength now, so he'll make some iron tools to buy time and get stronger. The next night, a few goblins go with Lin to look for iron ores. The female goblin is also forced to go with them, but she exhaustedly tells them to wait for her, as they've been walking all day. Hearing that, one of the goblins starts kicking her, laughing and saying pin her, calling her an ugly thing, and if she can't find iron ore, he'll beat her to death. The female screams and covers her head as she finds it hurting and begs him not to hit her, as she won't do it again. But the goblin keeps on kicking her, laughing and saying, lazy, and asking for death. Others also join in on beating her, excitedly saying, hit her, beat her to death. Right then, one of the goblins gets hit by a rock on his head from behind and turns back, looking furious, as Lin tells them that he brought them along to help find ore, not to fight. He adds that he has already told them what iron ore looks like, so if they want to stay alive, to find at least one piece of ore in the valley ahead. Otherwise, they'll all die, as he shows them his dagger. At that, the goblins start trembling in fear and run away from there, saying he's going to kill them with iron tools. They also frustratedly tell Lin that when they find the iron ores, the boss won't spare him. Lin understands that what he says is true. Even if he makes the iron tools, getting killed is just a matter of time. He turns toward the female goblin, and the system again notifies him that if a male goblin mates with a female goblin, the male goblin will become the legendary Goblin God. So Lin realizes that it's time to think about getting stronger and tells Goblin Yu not to cry. He gets close to her and asks if she'll stay with him. As long as she's with him from then on, he'll protect her, give her meat to eat, a warm place to stay, and no one will dare to bully her, to which Yu surprisedly asks if really. Lin tells her, of course, he keeps his words, but they're too weak right now, and to avoid being bullied, he needs her help to get stronger. Yu nervously asks how she can help him get stronger. Lin tells her that if she's willing to have children with him, he can get stronger. Hearing that, Yu's face turns red, and she asks if really, but she says she has never tried it before. Lin tells her it's okay as long as she's willing, and then he kisses her lips, which startles and makes Yu really nervous, and she starts to heat up. After that, Lin lays her down on the ground, as she bashfully tells him that she wants him to get stronger and requests him to let her have his babies. And so, they start mating together, and after a while, Lin gets notified by the system that he will have a total of 7 children with Goblin Yu, an increasing level cap. Then the system tells him that due to the talent limit, he gains attack plus 9, HP plus 100, and defense plus 10, as Lin's physical appearance also seems to look more muscular and stronger. So he checks his stats using the system and finds that his level has increased, a new title, Potential God, has been added, and his overall combat power is now 65. Lin excitedly thinks not only did his level increase, but even his form has improved, and with this, his chances of winning against the Goblin Priest are much higher. After that, he covers Yu with a cloth and affectionately tells her that from then on, she's his, he'll protect her for life, and Yu gladly tells Lin Tian that he's so kind. But then, they suddenly hear someone calling for help and laughing, which startles both of them, and they look in the direction the voice is coming from. They find a goblin holding something tightly in his arms and running away from a monster, frightenedly screaming, "Wolves, there are demon wolves." Lin looks closely and realizes that these guys actually found iron ore, but they also brought back some trouble. So then he tells Yu to wait there for him, as he takes out his dagger and heads toward the other goblin. Yu worriedly tells Lin Tian that it's wolves, so to be careful. After that, as the demon wolf almost catches up to the goblin, Lin comes rushing at it and stabs it right in the neck with a lot of force, leaving a deep wound, which surprises the goblin. In a matter of seconds, Lin manages to kill the demon wolf and it remains there fallen on the ground. Then he turns to the goblin who is being chased by the wolf and tells him with a scary look on his face, "Well done," to give him the iron ore, and the goblin terrifiedly hands him the ore. Holding it, Lin says with a smile that the quality is good and tells him to find some more. He'll make weapons for his when they get back, and the goblin hurriedly says, "Yes, yes." The next day in the morning, Lin says alright, this should do it, as he proceeds to use the ore to make an iron weapon. Some of the goblins of the goblin tribe gather around him and surprisedly say he really made something, and ask if this weird looking thing even works. After Lin finishes making an iron sphere, he uses it to stab the demon wolf corpse from the previous night easily, and tells the goblins to watch closely, as this is a weapon made from iron ore. The other goblins find it amazing while the goblin priest remains speechless. One of the goblins excitedly adds that he's not lying. He used the weapon to kill the magic wolf and save them. Hearing that, the others howl with excitement and say he really can make weapons. This iron sphere is way better than a stone sphere. It's amazing. So Lin asks them if they want some, and the more goblins gather around him excitedly saying yes, yes, they want some. However, the goblin priest finds it irritating, so then he hits his staff on the ground hard to grab everyone's attention, and says with a devilish grin on his face that he wasn't lying. He really can make iron tools, which confuses the other goblins. But the goblin priest says that if he wants to stay, it's not so simple. He tells Lin to make 50 of these weapons within 2 days. The other goblins get shocked to hear that, as one of them says, the boss is getting as nasty as the humans. And another goblin tells Lin to make more weapons. He can help, however, Lin smiles as he doesn't find it worrying at all. After that, on the delivery day, Lin tosses the 50 spheres at the goblin priest and tells him here's what he wanted, while the other goblins jump around, cheering for Lin. Seeing that, the goblin priest tells Lin with a wide grin on his face that he actually did it very good. Then he tells everyone that night they feast on meat and celebrate Lin Tian joining them, which makes the goblins really excited and they say so great. After a while, as everyone is busy eating, Yu happily goes up to Lin with a large portion of meat and tells him that this is the special gift the priest saved for him. Lin takes a bite, but immediately he finds it really hurting and starts coughing up the food. Seeing that, Yu worriedly asks what's wrong with him and tries to help him. Right then, the goblin priest comes and stands in front of them, as he laughs and tells Lin that he's so stupid, he thought he was so clever. He calls him an outsider and tells him not to think he doesn't see his ambition, daring to challenge the authority of this priest. There's only one way out. After that, the priest grabs Yu by her hair and forcibly pulls her up, telling Lin that it seems he cares about her. Then he grazes her neck with his sharp nail, causing her to bleed, and excitedly tells Lin to enjoy this traitor get their head sliced off by his own knife. The goblin priest adds that they should see how he stays smug in front of him. But right at that moment, Yu gets shocked to suddenly find herself free, and the priest's hand flying off of his body. Then Yu hurriedly moves away from the priest, while the priest's hand falls on the ground at a bit of distance from them. At that, the goblin priest frustratedly asks Lin how he could, and Lin giggles, telling him that he's the stupid one, calling him an old man. He's so damn sneaky. He thinks that he already knew from the system that he'd poison him, so he was just playing along. While the goblin priest gets really furious and screams at him to die, as he pulls down a flail hanging from his neck using his other hand, and rushes at Lin, trying to swing it at him to kill him. But right as the priest swings the flail at Lin, he quickly dodges his attack and gets behind him, holding his dagger in hand with a frightening look on his face. And before the goblin priest could do anything, Lin swings his sword at his neck and cuts his head clean off of his body. The other goblins get shocked to see their boss die before them so easily. After that, Lin walks toward them and the goblins get really terrified. However, he announces to them in a commanding voice that he's their new boss. He'll lead them to attack the elves, attack the humans, which surprises everyone. Then he pulls Yu close to him and tells everyone to have wild fun. They'll have endless meat to feast on. Hearing that, all the goblins there start howling as loud as they can with excitement and cheer him on, calling him boss. After that, Lin points at the goblin priest's dead body and tells everyone that this is theirs. Immediately, all the goblins excitedly run toward the corpse and start feasting on the goblin flesh. While Lin thinks with a devilish grin on his face that taking over the goblin tribe is just the start of revenge. Next, he'll make the elves help their tribe breed stronger next generations. And in the meantime, an elf looks at them, hiding behind some bushes, and worriedly wonders what's going on. A few days later, as the elf hurriedly returns to her home, the elf tribe base, an elf waiting outside a room gets surprised to see her as she calls her princess and says she's back. But then, as the elf princess proceeds to walk inside the room, the other elf tells her to wait and tries to warn her about the clan mother. However, the princess tells her no, she has urgent news to report. After that, she slams open the door and tells her dear mother that she has urgent news to report about the eastern enchanted forest. But then, the princess gets shocked to find her getting pleasured by some other elves, and the clan mother seems surprised to see her there, calling her Kasana. Seeing her in that situation, Kasana's face turns red and she nervously tells her dear mother she has to go now. Then her mother tells her to wait, as she says she rushes in to see her, so it must be urgent. At that, Kasana tells her that she has important news about the goblin tribe in the forest. The clan mother seems confused to hear that. She says they are weak and filthy low-level monsters, so she asks what could be so important about them. Kasana reports that that morning, she found a black-haired giant bear in the enchanted forest that had been gnawed to the bone, and it looked like the work of the goblins in the enchanted forests. That bear is one of the fiercest creatures in the forest. Goblins shouldn't be able to kill such a beast. A few days ago, she saw the old goblin chief killed by a young goblin. This change might be related to him. The clan mother asks a new chief and amusedly says it seems the number of goblins in the forest has recovered quite a bit. Then she gestures to a male elf to get close to her and tells Kasana to take some people and clean up the goblins, but not kill them all at once, leave some alive. The clan mother adds that the potion made from freshly extracted goblin hearts is an excellent tonic for the male elves in their tribe. As she's about to have fun with her servant, And Kasana bashfully says, "Yes, mother." Then her mother tells her dear princess that she has worked hard these past few days, so she asks how about a male elf as a reward that night. If that's not enough, there's more. Hearing that, Kasana's face turns hot red with awkwardness, so she hurriedly walks out of the room telling her mother that she'll go investigate more that night and report back if she finds anything. Meanwhile, at the Goblin village, a Goblin scout shows Lin a diagram with sticks and explains that one stick represents one treehouse, and the enchanted forest has about 30 elf treehouses, all very tall. Lin says, "Good job. When they conquer the elf tribe, he'll reward him with 2 elves, and tells him to tell everyone to sharpen the iron weapons." The Goblin surprisedly asks 2 elves. He laughs saying, "Long live the boss." Then he heads off excitedly saying that he'll go get the brothers ready with the weapons. After that, Lin looks at the diagram of sticks and thinks 30 elf treehouses, assuming 2 elves per house. That's 60 elves, plus the 10 or so guarding the mines. That's at least 70. Since the priest died, he has led the goblins to mine, make weapons, and hunt monsters to level up. He told them that starting that day, they'll hunt monsters in the enchanted forest. He asked if they got it, and the goblins excitedly said they got it. Day after day, as they continued hurting monsters, Lin leveled up and acquired new skills like Giant Fang Attack. He also got skills like Stone Skin, Stealth, Climb, Venom Secretion. He and the other goblins kept on fighting and improving their stats. Lin understands that with the goblins' Devour skill, the entire tribe has gained many skills, and overall levels have increased. An average goblin warrior is now of level 18. With powerful skills, really high stats, equipped with basic iron spear and basic iron armor, and overall combat strength of 250. Lin also understands that every elf has a combat power of about 200, so their tribe's overall strength has surpassed the elves. But right then, he gets notified that the simulation system cooldown is complete, and he says since they're launching a raid in elf territory, they should be careful. So Lin tells the system to start simulation, and the system says Goblin Life Simulation activated. Current scenario, night before the raid. Then the system tells him that he leads a greatly strengthened goblin army to raid the elf tribe, confident of success. But the elves ambush him, leading the goblin army into a trap and shooting them down. He is captured by the elf matriarch and hanged in the enchanted forest as a warning to the goblins. Summary, thought it was foolproof, but it was actually under someone else's control. Score 0, reward none. Seeing that, Lin thinks so that's how it ends, and finds it surprising that it's under someone else's control. Then he looks around him understanding that there's only one explanation for this outcome. The tribe is being watched by those elves. Lin knows that goblins have keen hearing and smell, so if he focuses, he should be able to find some clues. Then he senses something and looks in that direction thinking, he got it. In the meantime, Kasana and the elf soldiers that came with her have already started to rush back to their base. Kasana worriedly says these goblins plan to raid the tribe. She didn't expect such a big change in a few days. They must go back and inform the mother, and tells the others to hurry. The others say yes, understood. Right then, a bunch of arrows come straight at them from behind and land a direct hit on them, causing them to scream out loud in pain and fall to the ground. Kasana tries her best to get back up but finds that she can't use any strength at all, while her subordinates don't move at all. Then the goblins excitedly tell Lin that his shot was dead on, and that it's a female elf. After that, as Lin walks up to Kasana, she worriedly thinks that her body feels weird, so she wonders if it could be poison. Lin tells her with a creepy smile on his face that he didn't expect to catch her so easily. He adds that she showed up just in time, while the other goblins seem to be drooling. Then Lin orders them to take them all back, and the goblins excitedly say yes. Sometime later, a goblin impatiently tells another to wake her up, as the boss is there, and Kasana wakes up finding herself completely soaked in some kind of fluid. Then Lin tightly holds her face and picks her up, as the goblin excitedly tells him that he has been waiting for him. This female elf he has reserved for him. While Kasana worriedly thinks it seems that the body fluids of goblins have a special paralyzing and stimulating effect on female creatures, this gives them an even better chance of winning against the matriarchal elves. Then she irritatedly calls them lowly creatures and asks how dare they kidnap this princess and even try to attack the elves. Kasana furiously tells Lin that he thinks he's tough. If not for her mother's kindness, they would have been annihilated by the elves ages ago. If they touch even a single hair of hers, her mother will not let them go. But then, hearing all that, Lin smiles. He tosses Kasana to the ground and asks if she said kindness, as he says how amusing. Lin tells Kasana that the elves she speaks of and the elves his subordinates speak of seem to be quite different. His subordinates may be foolish, but they never lie. The elves could have completely wiped out all the goblins in the forest, but there are still so many goblins in the forest, it can't be just out of kindness, which shocks Kasana as she recalls what her mother said. Then, Lin tells her that there's no more need to explain. He will lead the tribe that night and get to the bottom of it. He orders one of the goblins to go and divide up the other 2 dead elves and devour them, and absorb their skill, which shocks Kasana. Then Lin looks at her and tells her with a creepy look on his face. As for her, seeing his expression, Kasana frightenedly tells him, "No, don't." She screams, "Don't do it," as Lin forcibly mates with her and the system says that he has reached the level cap plus 30. His other stats also increased, and he has acquired elf skills, stealth, and night vision. Meanwhile, at the elf base, the clan mother's elf escorts exhaustedly tell her that they can't anymore, and they should stop there for that day. It just happens that the potion is also finished. The clan mother disappointedly says it's really heartbreaking. If she had known, she would have captured more goblins the previous time. Then she turns toward a guard and asks if Kasana has not returned yet, and the guard tells her that Kasana left quite a while ago, and she should have returned by then. He worriedly tells her he thinks they should send some people to check it out. It would also be a good chance to kill some goblins and level up their tribe's warriors. The clan mother holds her head as she seems anxious, telling him alright, to take some warriors to the goblin tribe to support Kasana. But right then, Lin tells her that her Kasana, she won't be coming back that night. Everyone gets worried to hear that and the guard proceeds to unsheath his sword asking who's there. Immediately, Lin shoots an arrow at him and hits him right in the head, killing him in an instant. The clan mother grabs one coming at her but seems frightened. Then she looks in the direction the arrows came from, and stutteringly asks if it's the goblins, while Lin walks into the room telling her that Kasana was already caught by him and will soon have his child. He adds with a smug look on his face that they're going to become family now. Hearing that, the elf clan mother takes out a sword and furiously asks what he has done to Kasana, to which Lin asks what she thinks. Hearing that, the holy mother rushes toward him screaming she's going to kill him, but right then, Lin moves out of the way, telling her that her tribe has been besieged, surrender obediently, and he'll consider treating them well, as the clan mother suddenly falls over. She seems shocked by that and finds it hard to move her body. Then Lin explains that the arrow she just caught was covered with goblin fluid. Once she comes in contact with it, she'll be paralyzed very quickly, so he suggests she behave herself. The Holy Mother finds it frustrating. After that, Lin gets down and tells her that when he was outside he heard her talking about upgrading her warriors and stimulating potions. So it turns out the elves have always been using the goblins in this way, but he guesses they didn't expect the goblins to one day come and settle the score with them. As he puts his dagger up to the clan mother's neck, and the Holy Mother worriedly wonders if this goblin could be the new leader Kasana was talking about. Right then, they hear loud screams like "kill them," and a lot of the people crying for help, which startles the Holy Mother as she asks what that was, and Lin looks outside saying it seems like it's about time. He pulls the clan mother up to the window to show her what's happening below, and excitedly tells her, "Alright, now it's time to talk about cooperation." The Holy Mother looks outside and gets shocked to see the other elves sobbing and calling her to save them. They don't want to be taken by the goblins, as they're getting attacked and slaughtered by them. Then she frustratedly asks Lin what he has done to her tribe, and Lin tells her now the goblins are not weaker than the elves, so she doesn't have the ability to resist. He explains that when the elves had power, they slaughtered the goblins, so it's only natural for them to seek revenge when they have become powerful. He advises her to face reality. Then Lin gets close to the Holy Mother, putting his dagger up to her face, and tells her that he needs more and stronger goblin warriors, so he still needs them. As for whether they live or die after achieving that, it all depends on her attitude as the Holy Mother, and the only thing that goes through the Holy Mother is the other elves' screams for help. So then, she goes up to Lin and desperately tells him that as long as he doesn't kill her children, as long as they can still live, she can do whatever he wants her to do. The elf clan mother finally gives in to his demands, as she tells him that she's willing to bring them to stay with them, and give birth to their children. The next day, inside a cage at the Goblin village, seeing the Holy Mother there, Kasana goes up to her crying out loud, and asks if even she has been captured by goblins, what they'll do in the future. The clan mother sadly apologizes to her as it's her fault. She underestimated them. She didn't expect the goblins to have attained strength that far surpasses the elves. And now, the elves are only left with unarmed women and children to preserve the bloodline of the elves. They need to mate with the goblins, as the goblins are already at it, and the elves seem devastated. The Holy Mother tries to calm Kasana down while telling her that from now on, they can only survive within the Goblin tribe, and Kasana keeps on crying. Right then, Lin comes and tells them that they all should just stay inside and wait to give birth. He'll arrange their meals every day. If anyone has bad intentions, not to blame him for being ruthless and killing them all. The Holy Mother says she understands, but she concernedly tells him that she has a request. These are all her children, so she asks if she can take care of them. As they look at you playing with both the newly born goblin kids and elf kids, but she seems to be having trouble taking care of so many children. Lin thinks about what the Holy Mother asked and wonders if it's because of the attribute issue, as he checks the system and finds that she has an attribute called boundless maternal love. Yu also calls him and embarrassedly tells him that she can't take care of them all by herself. Then Lin tells her to let the Holy Mother help her. From then on, she can take care of the children, as he thinks when these elves grow up, they can also add significant strength to the tribe. Also, he thinks they should take a look at the stats after mating with Holy Mother as he further checks the attribute. Right then, the system notifies him saying, congratulations to him for gaining a qualification boost, converting to plus 200 HP, plus 30 strength, plus 30 defense. Seeing that, Lin wonders if it could be that his qualification has already been unlocked to the highest level, as recently all the acquired values have been directly converted into attributes. So then, he excitedly thinks, it seems that from then on, all he has to do to increase his strength is to continue mating with stronger individuals and have them give birth. Also, his current strength is already enough to crush Loader, so after these elves give birth, he'll find an opportunity to deal with him. Half a month later, loud cries can be heard from the Goblin village, as newly captured elves have started to give birth to goblin children. Seeing a small goblin youngling, its mother frighteningly tries to move away asking if this is her child, how disgusting, and tells them to get away from them, as she doesn't want to have this kind of child. Looking at them, Lin asks Yu how many newborns they have so far, and Yu, who's a bit tired of helping all the elves with labor, says she thinks around 30 to 40 by now. Right then, they hear Kasana screaming out loud like she's about to die, which worries Lin, and he along with Yu hurriedly rushes toward her cage. The Holy Mother tells Kasana not to give up and push harder, but Kasana cries saying that she can't do it anymore. Seeing Lin there, the Holy Mother begs him to save Kasana as it's her first time giving birth, and she seems to be on the brink of death. Then Lin quickly walks toward Kasana telling Yu to hurry, and Yu hurriedly rushes toward Kasana saying alright. After that, Lin tries to help Kasana, and seeing him operate, the Holy Mother surprisedly asks if he knows how to do this. Lin tells her he knows a bit. Looking at him, Kasana wearily tells him no, she doesn't want him to, but Lin tells her to shut up, as they are also his children. Sometime later, Lin walks out of the cage and wipes his hands saying it's okay, she's fine now. Yu excitedly tells him he's amazing, he saved her, but Lin tells her it's not a big deal. While the goblins Kasana gave birth to confusedly roam around her. But then, they hear an elf screaming telling someone to let her go, so Lin and Yu hurriedly look in that direction. They find two goblins trying to force themselves on an elf who just gave birth, as one excitedly laughs and says he can use it, but the elf keeps screaming telling him to let go. Right at that moment, Lin rushes toward the goblin and cuts his neck from behind using his dagger, killing him in an instant, which startles the other goblin. Then Lin tells him a scary look on his face. He said to wait until they are fully rested and recovered before allowing them, and whoever disobeys will face consequences, death. Also, he tells the goblin that from then on, each elf will be given an extra portion of fruit. Hearing that, the goblin hurriedly bows before him but seems really terrified. After that, the Holy Mother gladly tells Lin he really is different from ordinary goblins. But Lin tells her this is what should be done, as long as they behave themselves. They'll be treated better. Then he runs the simulation and the system says stimulated life scenario starting. Current scenario, capturing the elves. After much effort, he conquered the elf tribe and fill all the female elves. After the elves become filled, they'll give birth to a goblin with stronger attributes than the average goblin. Seeing that the tribe is about to expand, Lin decides to seek revenge on Loader, and the other, he infiltrated Bright Town alone and successfully located the whereabouts of the Blade Hero group. Then the system shows three options. 1. Try to kill Loader and the others himself, rating plus 50. 2. Lead the goblin to seek revenge and massacre Bright Town, rating plus 30. 3. Wait and see, rating +10. Seeing that, Lin wonders how they were able to find them so quickly, and understands that although his current strength is almost equal to Loader's, his companion's strength should not be underestimated. Still, he thinks his current attributes should easily allow him to kill Loader, so he chooses the first option, to try and kill Loader, and the others all by himself. Then the system gives results saying, finally, he found an opportunity to attack Loader, so he chose to strike decisively. And Loader was almost killed in the process. However, at that moment, Loader's master appeared. The Sword Saint of the human race, the Sword Saintess saved Loader, and Lin died tragically under her sword. Soon after, Loader and his group returned to the capital and were never seen again. Summary: facing the powerful Sword Saintess, there was no chance to escape, so he must be careful. Score 30 points, reward 30 life points, stimulated life scenario completed, with a time progression of 9 days. Learning about all that, Lin worriedly wonders, the Sword Saintess, why such a powerful person would appear in such a small place, and he didn't expect Loader and his group to leave Bright Town. He knows that once they leave, it'll be difficult to find them again, so he frustratedly thinks it looks like he needs to hurry up. He sees the elf Holy Mother taking care of the newly borns along with Yu, then he gets up and walks toward them thinking he has got it. He tells Goblin Yu that he needs to go to the human territory for a few days. The warriors in the tribe listen to her the most after him, so he'll leave the tribe in her hands. Which surprises Yu, and the elf Holy Mother worriedly asks if he's crazy, as if he's discovered by the humans in their territory, he'll be hunted and killed. Lin tells her she should know he has a grudge against humans, he must seek revenge. But the Holy Mother tells him to hold on. She can cast a stealth spell on him so that he won't be detected by the humans. Hearing that, Lin smiles thinking that's exactly what he was waiting for her to say, and tells the Holy Mother he didn't expect her to care about his safety. How rare. The Holy Mother says she's just afraid that if he dies, those goblins will be even more cruel to them, as she uses the stealth spell on him. Besides, she worriedly tells him that her children are all there, only if he returns safely will they be secure, and Lin thinks this Holy Mother really knows how to survive. After that, as he puts on a hood and leaves for Bright Town, Yu shouts at him saying she'll take good care of the tribe for him, and Lin tells her he'll see her later, he'll come back soon. The next day in the morning, after he reaches Bright Town, Lin finds a lot of knights gathered in the town and constantly on the lookout for any anomalies. He thinks there's another patrol team over there. The defenses around the town have suddenly become so strict, so he wonders if it could be that the Sword Saintess has already arrived. But Lin walks on the streets thinking he has been gathering information all day, and he hasn't heard any news regarding the Sword Saintess. He finds it strange. However, as he reaches the town square, he finds most of the streets empty but a bunch of people in front of a notices board, so he goes there to check what's going on. Then Lin looks closely and gets surprised to find that in the adventurer team's ranking in Bright Town, he finds that the Blade Hero team ranked first, followed by Boshi Hero team, Savior Hero team, and other teams, so he wonders if Loader has improved again, as he's actually ranked first. So then Lin walks ahead thinking he needs to hurry and find more clues, or his revenge plan will fail. After a while, he stops in front of a tavern as he hears someone laughing loudly and saying that day, it's his treat, so they should all drink to their heart's content. Lin recognizes that voice and thinks with a devilish grin on his face he finds it hard to believe that he'd run into him there, of all places. He understands that it's Loader and enters the tavern, as Loader is busy celebrating with his teammates. One of the teammates says he was almost killed by the four-armed ape. Thankfully, Freya and Captain Loader arrive just in time to save him. Freya says the captain is truly amazing. Otherwise, she couldn't have killed the ape alone. However, an adventurer of another team mockingly says how ridiculous that they have the nerve to brag about something as small as a four-armed ape. Hearing that, the guy from Loader's team furiously slams his hand on the table and asks what's it to them, calling them Boshi team, and tells them to get lost. Then the guy from Boshi team gets up yelling at him not to think that he won't beat them up, just because he's a part of the Blade Hero team. The other guy says come on then and asks who's afraid of whom. Right then, the bartender tells them that recently, the dragons on Dragon Island have entered their fill season. They're kidnapping livestock and even eating people, if they have the skills, to go slay the dragons, not just cause trouble in the tavern. Lin, who is blended in with the people, gets surprised to hear about dragons. Then the bartender releases a sigh and adds that if the dragons attack Bright Town and the capital doesn't send reinforcements in time, the adventurers in town won't be able to fend off the dragon horde's attacks, so it seems Bright Town is about to face darkness, which worries the adventurers there. But then, Loder says it's just a few dragons and asks what's there to be afraid of, as at this point, there's no need for him to hide it any longer. The Sword Saintess is already on her way there. He explains that she's his master, and once she arrives, they'll join forces to slay the dragons, so there's no need for the capital to send troops at all, and when everything's resolved, their team will return to the capital with her. The other adventurers there get astonished to hear that Loder even managed to summon the Sword Saintess, and ask how that can be. He must be boasting. One excitedly asks, with the Sword Saintess there, why they would still be afraid of fighting against the dragons, and another adventurer says if this succeeds, Loder will become the hero of Bright Town. Then Loder puts down a bag of gold coins and announces that that day, he'll treat brave warriors to drinks, as a way to celebrate the Sword Saintess's arrival, and the success of slaying the dragons in advance. At that moment, Lin pays his bill and gets up from his chair thinking if the dragons attack the town, he must seize that opportunity, and Loder notices him leaving. So as Lin walks out of the tavern, Loder calls him and asks why he doesn't stay and have a few drinks with them. However, Lin says no, and tells Loder with a mysterious smile on his face that there will be more opportunities in the future. Seeing his attitude, Loder thinks it's strange. Sometime later, as the Sword Saintess enters Bright Town, the knights and townspeople receive her with a warm welcome. After that, the Sword Saintess enters the cathedral and prays before the gods, while Loder goes up to her to get her up to speed with the current situation. He informs her that the dragon has been lingering around these days and is getting closer to them. No one dares to let their animals go outside to graze now, as it might seem like the dragon might attack Bright Town soon. After that, the Sword Saintess takes her sword and gets up asking how that task she gave him is coming along. Loder tells her that the 10 dragon-slaying crossbows have been made according to the provided blueprints, and they've been deployed at various high points around the town. The Sword Saintess tells him to deploy them well, otherwise, none of them will be of any help when the time comes, and it'll be a disgrace to her. Then, as she walks out, people waiting outside excitedly say she's so noble. They don't know what kind of man could ever win her over, but a guy tells them not to even think about it, as even the Emperor wouldn't dare make a move on her. The Sword Saintess irritatedly tells Loder that this is an important period for them, so she asks what they all are doing standing around, and tells him to disperse them quickly, to which Loder nervously says yes, master. Right at that moment, they hear a loud roar and the townspeople terrifiedly scurry around screaming run. It's coming, as a dragon comes down from the sky and picks up a person. Seeing that, Loder and the Sword Saintess both take out their swords, and the Sword Saintess says with a serious look on her face that it's a scout dragon. She shouts saying that once it shows up, it will definitely attract the dragon horde, and tells Loder to bring his companions and follow her to the wall. In the meanwhile, a goblin scout who's outside the city walls hurriedly runs up to Lin, calling him boss, and tells them that the dragon is there. He worriedly tells him that he just went to check it out. There are many soldiers on the town's wall, so he asks what they should do. Lin looks at Bright Town and says with a smile, he knows the time is almost there, so they should stay there and enjoy the show, as he has a large goblin army with him, ready to jump into battle. In a matter of seconds, the sky above the town gets covered by dozens of dragons coming to attack it. But immediately, someone starts shooting them down straight from the sky, which astonishes both Loder and Ifraya. Then the Sword Saintess asks the adventurers if they understand how to use the dragon-slaying crossbow, and tells everyone to go to the dragon-slaying crossbow and get ready. The adventurers say yes as they all get into position. Then they operate the crossbows like the Sword Saintess showed them, saying loading completed, ready, fire, and start shooting down the dragons that are coming to attack them quickly one after another. Seeing that, the people excitedly say, as expected of the dragon-slaying crossbow, it's amazing. But then, a guy worriedly says wait, look quickly, as suddenly, powerful purple thunder starts striking, and the adventurers hurriedly cover their ears saying, oh no, something's coming from the sky, their head hurts so much. Loder and Ifraya also seem terrified to see that, as Loder worriedly tries to tell his master what it is. At that moment, the creature shows up before them and the other adventurers scream, it's the purple golden dragon mother, quick, prepare to shoot. But one guy says that the difference is too big, and these dragon-slaying crossbows can't even hurt her. Right then, the dragon mother shoots an insanely powerful fire beam at them. As it's about to fall on the adventurers, they hurriedly try to escape from there screaming the town wall is going to collapse, and run. But then, the Sword Saintess tells everyone not to panic, to leave the Dragon Mother to her, and to continue to defend the city, as she puts her sword into the ground and uses her advanced sword techniques, Sword Kai Torrent, to create a barrier around the city and manages to block the Dragon Mother's attack. Looking at it from afar, Lin thinks he didn't expect that it would actually hold off the Dragon Mother's attack. But it was also expected, although the Dragon Mother is abnormal, as he checks the system and finds that its level a 79 ancient dragon, has insanely high HP, many powerful skills, and overall combat strength of 2,900. But Lin looks at the Sword Saintess thinking this guy is a real monster, as he checks the system and finds that her name is Alisnia. Level 80, has titles like Strongest Swordsman, Top Human, higher strength and defense than the Mother Dragon, extremely powerful skills, and an overall power level of 4,000. As the Sword Saintess single-handedly takes on the Mother Dragon, Lin thinks this woman's strength is too abnormal. Fortunately, it's not him facing her, otherwise it'd be a big problem. Then as the Sword Saintess puts a hole through the Mother Dragon's wing using a sword skill, Lin thinks the Dragon Mother is slightly weaker than the Saintess, but has the advantage of having higher up. He understands that the Saintess can't defeat the Dragon Mother in a short time, and this is the perfect opportunity. So Lin says with a devilish grin on his face that the opportunity to take revenge against the humanity has come, and tells his subordinates to proceed into the city as planned. One team will create a disturbance, and the other team will lie in ambush. Hearing that, the other goblins excitedly say, "Yes, boss," and head of Bright Town. Sometime later, most of the outer part of the town is burning in flames, and Loder frustratedly says these flying dragons are so difficult to deal with. Still, he gladly adds that beasts will remain as beasts. They're fortunate to have Master's help this time. And he's also a dragon slayer now, as a dragon is lying dead before him that he just killed. But then, Loder gets startled to hear a townsperson screaming and running toward him saying, "Goblins are invading." The other members of the Blade Hero team also get shocked to hear that. Their hands are already full trying to fend off the dragon, so one tells the person not to joke around, as even goblins, no matter how dumb they are, they wouldn't dare to appear there. However, at that moment, Loder sees a woman screaming and crying for help, trying to run away from goblins, and he frustratedly says, "Damn it." Then he says there aren't many evil dragons left, so he tells the other two to hold them off first, and tells Ifraya to come with him to deal with the goblins. Ifraya says yes. After that, the two rush forward to kill the goblins ahead, as Loder furiously tells the goblins to stop, but a few goblins lie hiding under a manhole, waiting to ambush them. And right as they pass over them, a goblin stabs Loder in the foot making him fall to the ground, and others quickly trap Ifraya with a net. Ifraya screams to the captain calling for help, telling him that she has been captured by the goblins, and Loder frustratedly asks why there are so many goblins, as they're surrounded from both sides. Seeing that, the other two adventurers of his team tell him that they're coming and to hold on. However, they also get surrounded by goblins and find no way to move forward, while Lin walks toward them from behind with a creepy look in his eyes. Loder notices that and hurriedly tells his teammate to watch out behind them, but it's too late. As at that moment, Lin reaches up to the two adventurers and slices their heads off of their bodies in an instant, which shocks both Loder and Ifraya. Then Lin starts walking toward them telling them he didn't expect that they'd be caught so easily. At that, Loder infuriatedly yells at him telling him that he's going to kill them lowly goblins. But then, Lin kicks him hard right in the face, knocking him down to the ground, and tells him to look at the situation carefully before speaking. After that, he tells a few goblins to take the two of them out of the city through the sewers, and the rest to come with him to the city wall and deal with the crossbowmen, to which the goblins say yes boss, and get onto it. In the meantime, the Sword Saintess notices the commotion and worriedly wonders what's going on, if goblins actually dared to launch a surprise attack at this time. But then, the Mother Dragon in her human form asks her with an evil smile what's going on, if they are busy among themselves as well, calling her human sword saint. Right then, the Mother Dragon rushes at her and tries to punch her furiously telling her to die, calling her a witch. But the Sword Saintess seems unfazed as she asks if she's struggling to keep up. She tells her that they should find out how much more dragon blood can be split, as she attacks her with her advanced sword technique, Steel Gale, and the Mother Dragon hurriedly block it. However, she gets hurt from the attack and cries out in pain, while the Sword Saintess thinks the Dragon Mother is almost dealt with, and wonders if Loder has dealt with those dragons and goblins on his end. Right then, a huge explosion occurs inside the city, which surprises the Sword Saintess, and she worriedly wonders if the riot has not been resolved yet. At that moment, the mother dragon excitedly says these goblins really came at the right time, as she transforms back to her true form and escapes from there, bidding the Sword Saintess goodbye. She tells her that she'll come back after she has recovered from her wounds, and looking at her, the Sword Saintess frustratedly says she managed to escape. So she infuriatedly tells her to just wait, as she'll wipe out the entire dragon race on Dragon Island once she has recovered. After that, she returns back inside the town and effortlessly cuts down the remaining goblins. Then the Sword Saintess asks where Loader is, as these useless fools can't even kill goblins. At that moment, an adventurer who seems badly hurt and devastated tells her that goblins have captured Loader and Ifraya. The Sword Saintess gets shocked to hear that, as she asks how that is possible. And the adventurer tells her that these goblins are very unusual. He explains that their strength is comparable to a great race, even Loader couldn't defeat them, which makes the Sword Saintess really furious. She immediately proceeds to head out of the town, saying in a serious tone that she will go and slaughter all the goblin tribes in the enchanted forest right now. But then, a female adventurer hurriedly goes up to her and begs her to stay with them, as she asks what if those evil dragons or goblins come back to attack them again, what they'll do then. After that, all the people there start begging the Saintess, telling her that they are all the citizens of the temple and the empire. They request her to stay with them and keep calling her. The Sword Saintess thinks that's right. Compared to the captured members of the hero's party, it is her duty to protect the temple's citizens. She also thinks if Loader wants to blame someone, he should blame himself for being too weak. He couldn't even deal with the goblins. So she has no choice but to ask the royal family for help first. In the meantime, Lin and his subordinates return to their small goblin village, and seeing them, a goblin excitedly says he's back, the leader has returned. Others gather around them, asks if they've returned, and gets surprised to find that they even captured 2 humans, as they ask where they caught them from. Then the goblins that brought Loader and Ifraya toss them to the ground, with their hands still tied up, and a goblin general leaves them with some guards yelling at them to be quiet. Loader looks around and surprisedly says they're actually keeping so many elves in captivity. At that, Ifraya frustratedly says there might be a hero-tier goblin in this tribe, while she keeps panting due to exhaustion. Loader asks her if she has recovered a bit, and Ifraya keeps using healing magic on herself, telling him that this toxin is very potent. It'll take some time for her sacred constitution to eliminate the effects. Right at that moment, Lin shows up there, saying he didn't expect the poison to lose its effect so soon. He tells Ifraya that her recovery ability is indeed strong, which causes her to tremble in fear. At that, Loader furiously tries to get up and hit him, but a goblin guard pins him down. Then Lin goes up to Ifraya and grabs her leg. At that, she frightenedly asks him how he knows her name, what he wants to do. Seeing such fear on her face, Lin amusedly asks if she's asking what he wants to do, and then he sinks his claws into her leg. It causes Ifraya an insane amount of pain, and she screams her heart out. At that, Loader furiously shouts at Lin to stop and says, "Damn it." Immediately, a powerful-looking goblin punches him right in the face hard, telling him not to dare yell at the boss. Then Loader irritatedly asks Lin if he isn't a highly intelligent goblin, if he hasn't thought about the consequences of capturing them, as the strength of the Sword Saintess is enough to kill their entire tribe with one strike. Lin asks if he's talking about the Sword Saintess, as she's his prey too. But the time hasn't come yet. Besides, he has already sent someone to cover their tracks, so even if she wants to find this place, she won't be able to. After that, he orders the Goblin Berserker to take all the second-generation goblins to the forest with him to kill more monsters and bring them back. The goblin says no problem and tells him to leave it to him. Lin understands that this time, with such a big move, the humans definitely won't let it slide. They have to complete the evolution process before they find them. So then, he steps on Loader's chest and tells him he'll ask, to which Loader answers if he doesn't cooperate. He doesn't know which part of his body might go missing. After that, Lin asks if he's fond of capturing goblins in secret and inflicting torment on them. Loader gets very nervous hearing that and frustratedly asks what nonsense he's sprouting. Lin says his answer is too slow, and immediately, Loader gets startled to find a bright flash of light right beside his eye, as Lin cuts off his ear in an instant. Because of that, Loader rolls back and forth on the ground as he feels immeasurable pain and cries out loud saying, his ear, it hurts so much, and calls Lin a damn goblin. He keeps holding the place where the ear was and frustratedly tells Lin that everything they've done is to protect the human race. It's their duty to defeat them damn monsters. Lin acts surprisedly and he asks if it's for the humans, for duty, as he says he thinks it's more about constantly elevating the status of their so-called heroes party. It's much easier to kill the captured humans along with the monsters than to rescue them alive. So he asks, they who claim to be righteous, just how much blood debt they have accrued to complete their missions. Both Loader and Ifraya get shocked to hear that, as they anxiously wonder, this goblin, how it knows about them. Then Lin tells them with a terrifying look on his face that the conversation is over. Unlike them, he doesn't need to pretend to be righteous, because he's inherently a monster. And now, this evil monster is going to teach them a lesson as he proceeds to break Ifraya. And Loader yells at him no, not to dare hurt her. Ifraya exhaustedly calls him, requesting him to save her, and Loader screams at Lin telling him to stop, calling him a beast, while Ifraya keeps telling Lin no, stop. Seeing that, Loader furiously tries to get up, shouting at Lin, calling him a damn beast, and keeps telling him to stop. Immediately the goblin guards pin him back onto the ground. Ifraya seems so devastated that she can't even find the strength to scream, and Lin tells him that he's now returning her original words to her. The lesson has just begun, so she'd better hold on. Then he shows her face to Loader by holding her, and tells her in a devilish tone that they should see if her Loader enjoys watching what these goblins will do to her, as a bunch of thirsty-looking goblins head toward her using her. Looking at his beloved Ifraya, Loader seems completely traumatized and screams out her name, as the savage goblins grab her and are about to destroy her holiness. The next day in the morning, a goblin irritatedly tells another that it's time to switch shifts. It's his turn to stand guard. He adds by yelling at him that the boss said to keep her alive, so to not to kill her. But the other goblin giggles as he comes back after taking advantage of the tied-up Ifraya. He tells him not to worry, as she's still alive and well, while Ifraya seems completely ruined. Seeing that, Loader desperately calls her name, his Ifraya, and tells her that she must hang on, or these goblins will, and Ifraya mutters that she's fine. At that, the goblin in charge of guarding them pins his face onto the ground, furiously asking who said he could talk, and tells him to shut up. Seeing that, the elf Holy Mother questions, judging by this, if it could be that Lin Tian has a grudge against humans, and Kasana tells her that they have it worse than them, at least they have fruit to eat. Right then, Yu enters the tent with some fruits, telling them she heard him mention before that he wanted to take revenge on humans, so it must be true. Hearing that, the Holy Mother says he always keeps his word and never forgets a grudge. He's the most unique goblin she has ever seen. Then she gets lost in a daze thinking, even in that regard, he's so, and Kasana nervously calls her as she thinks she understands. She has taken a liking to him. At that moment, a goblin soldier goes up to Lin and informs him that the second-generation goblins who went out hunting have returned, which surprises Lin. He looks at the huge goblins coming back to the village with large monsters on their backs that they hunted and questions why they're back so early that day. One of the goblins calls him boss and excitedly tells him that they're back. He's level 33, class warrior, child of elves, with significantly higher stats than normal goblins, and an overall combat point of 500. Lin thinks as expected of the second-generation goblins. They've already broken through to level 30 and evolved into a high-tier species. Also, their stats are almost catching up to his. But he asks the second-generation goblin why they came back so early that day if the hunt was successful. At that, the goblin explains to him that they've wiped out all the nearby monsters, so they had to head to the west side of the forest. But they ran into several high-tier goblins slaughtering goblin tribes. Lin gets surprised to hear about the west side and asks which tribe. Then another goblin worriedly tells him that he knows. It's the Bloodfang tribe. They're all high-tier goblins. While they were splitting up to find monsters, they discovered that several tribes had been attacked and they all bore the Bloodfang mark. Hearing that, Lin says, interesting. If they capture their leader, they could create even stronger third-generation goblins, increasing their chances of surviving the humans' extermination efforts. But then, Loader starts laughing and calls them foolish. He asks if they're dreaming when they're on the brink of death, as no matter how powerful the goblins are, they're still defeated by the night. He tells them to just wait. However, in response, Lin tells him in a scary tone that he almost forgot about him since he has been so quiet. Then he tells some other goblins that they haven't even gotten in line yet. There's a human over there, and the goblins gather in front of Loader, looking really excited to have some fun. Seeing that, Loader asks what they demons are planning to do, then a goblin holds his mouth and giggles saying finally, it's his turn. Humans are the best, even the males have such soft and tender skin. and Loader horrifiedly tries to scream, asking what they're going to do. He calls them monsters and shouts that the knights must exterminate their terrifying race, as after that, he gets demolished by the goblins. Several hours later, Loader lies on the ground with no strength left to even think, as he seems completely drained and destroyed. Meanwhile, as the goblins are celebrating around a bonfire because they're having a feast, with elves there as well, Yu asks Lin Tian if he means they're going to attack the Bloodfang tribe next. Lin tells her yes, if they're going to do this, they have to be the strongest, so not only will they attack them, but they'll also capture their leader. The elf Holy Mother is also seated beside him and massaging him. Then Lin announces to everyone that he has even come up with a name. From then on, they'll be called the Tianquang tribe. The goblins get really thrilled to hear that and start cheering for him, calling him boss and saying that boss is mighty. After that, they all gather around Lin and excitedly say that their tribe has a name now. Then they all start cheering together, chanting their tribe's name, Tianquang tribe. But Yu tells Lin that they've wiped out so many tribes, and they seem really strong, so she seems worried about attacking them and capturing their leader, to which Lin tells her not to worry. He has confidence. He explains that he still has a trump card he hasn't used yet, as he looks at the shattered Ifraya. The next day in the morning, as Lin gets close to the enemy settlement, he looks ahead and says the view is nice, just right to see everything. He should take a look at their actual strength, as he observes the goblin village of the Bloodfang tribe deep inside the demonic forest. Lin looks around and thinks there are indeed quite a few high-tier goblins, but they should be manageable. But then, he thinks, wait, these goblins seem very scared, and it looks like their leader is coming. After that, Lin gets surprised to see the leader of the Bloodfang tribe and smiles, as he finds that he's actually a hero-class goblin. He checks the system and finds that it's a Warhammer Goblin, level 50, Monster Slayer, raising machine, with really high stats and powerful skills, and an overall combat power of 900. Lin thinks it doesn't seem that powerful with a total combat power of 900. A dozen or so goblin warriors should be able to handle it. But it's not easy to capture him alive. He understands that looking at their size, the poison might have little effect on them, and since the paralytic poison won't work on him, he'll have to think of another way. But then, Lin thinks it'd be great if he could use the imprisonment spell that Ifraya used on him on this guy. So he decides, it's time to go and see Ifraya. Sometime later back in Lin's village, a goblin goes up to him with a pot and tells him that they completed his orders according to his instructions. But that human is dying. Lin tells him he did well. Then he soaks a cloth with the liquid in the pot and walks toward Ifraya, while she keeps begging to kill her, and she will atone for her sins in the presence of her lord. Lin greets her saying hello and places the cloth on her wound, which Ifraya finds very soothing and says, warm, so warm. But then, she gets startled to see that it's Lin and hurriedly moves back, telling him no, don't, to stay away from her. She holds her face and screams at him, calling him a demon, and says that she's going crazy, she's in so much pain. Right at that moment, Lin slaps her to knock her back to her senses. Then he grabs Ifraya from behind to bring her close to him and tells her that her punishment is over, which surprises her. Ifraya desperately asks if really, and Lin tells her that he keeps his word, but the prerequisite is that she has to choose her faith. Ifraya seems confused by that and asks what faith. Then Lin explains to her that it is about choosing to believe in God, or she can choose to trust him, become his pet, and be separated from the daily torment. Hearing that, Ifraya thinks for a moment, then she hurriedly starts petting her as a good dog, and Lin tells her very good. Then he tells her that from then on, he's her only master and he'll call her little dog. Immediately, she stands on the ground with 4 legs and woofs like a pet dog, calling him master. After that, Lin picks her up and carries her to a well with warm water, telling her to come with him. He then unclothes her and puts her in the warm water to bathe her. At that, Ifraya amazedly says he treats her so well, so she's willing to give him everything. As she starts to feel really relaxed, Lin asks her with a smile on his face if really, and says that's perfect. He tells her that he wants to see how she uses the skill Holy Light Cage. Ifraya seems surprised to hear that and asks him what that is. After that, Lin provides her with fresh clothes and puts the magic book he obtained from the elves in front of her. Looking at it, Ifraya asks the Holy Light Cage if this is it. Then she reads through the spell and tries to activate it by congesting her holy magic mana. In a matter of seconds, the Holy Light Cage materializes before them, and Lin excitedly tells Ifraya that's right, well done. After that, he walks past the cages for captives, heading somewhere with Ifraya behind him. Right then, Loader, who's in one of the cages, gets surprised to see her and hurriedly asks if she has recovered. He tells her quick to kill that goblin and use magic to restore his body. Hurry. However, Lin asks if he didn't see that she's already willingly submitted to him. Loder gets shocked to hear that, as he asks how the daughter of the leader of the Holy Order could be tamed by a goblin. Then Ifraya sits beside Lin like a loyal dog, as Lin tells her to tell him if she didn't submit willingly. Ifraya gladly tells him of course, everything was done voluntarily on her part. Seeing that, Loder seems completely stunned. Then he furiously grips the bars and excitedly tells Lin that his actions will lead to the extinction of the goblin from this world. He laughs like a lunatic and explains that the only purpose of their existence is to be slaughtered by humans. The Holy Church will wipe them out. Hearing that, Lin thinks he didn't expect Ifraya to have this identity. Then he thanks Loder for telling him such important information, and he must reward him well. So he tells the guard goblins to not let this guy rest these few days, and a goblin stretches his whip and excitedly tells his boss not to worry, as he'll take care of him. After that, he says, alright, now they should get to business. He leaves the village telling Ifraya to come with him, as they should take down the Bloodfang tribe. Sometime later, at the base of the Bloodfang tribe, the Goblin lieutenant informs the leader that everything is ready. Hearing that, the leader excitedly says good, that day they'll destroy the southern tribes. He tells everyone that they'll capture their elves and have some fun with them. At that, the other goblins start cheering him on, telling him that he's awesome. But then, a goblin comes running and hurriedly tells him that a goblin barged into the tribe, saying he's looking for him, which surprises the leader as he asks what. Then as he sees Lin coming toward him all alone, he confusedly asks if it's a low-level goblin. Then Lin tells the Bloodfang leader that he knows he's a hero-level goblin, with intelligence close to humans, which is why he's there to talk to him. Looking at him closely, the Bloodfang leader asks if he's a mutant, and Lin tells him no, he's just slightly smarter than a normal goblin, while the other goblins start to get wary of him. Then Lin tells them enough talk, he's the leader of the southern tribe, and he wants their leader's head. He adds with a frightening look on his face that the rest of them have two choices, submit to him or die there. Hearing that, the Bloodfang leader infuriatedly asks his lieutenant if he's the tribe leader who keeps elves captive. Then, Lin tells him that his genes are good, so he offers him to come with him, but the leader calls him a fool. He grabs Lin by his face and lifts him off the ground, furiously telling him to shut his mouth. He didn't expect he'd come to him himself, and once he kills all of them, the elves and the humans will all be his. Seeing that, the other goblins cheer on for their boss and excitedly tell him to crush him. But then, Lin says as expected, it's useless to talk further. If he didn't want to capture him alive, no more words are needed. As he quickly takes out his dagger hidden behind him and cuts off the Bloodfang leader's hand, holding him to free himself. It causes the leader to scream out in pain and fall to the ground, which shocks the other goblins there. And then the leader furiously orders them to kill him. The Goblin lieutenant also orders the other goblins to kill Lin and avenge the boss, as the other goblins start rushing toward Lin with their weapons in hand. But at that moment, Lin raises his hand and flicks his fingers, telling someone to come out. And immediately, someone stabs the Goblin lieutenant from behind, severely wounding him. He looks back and finds that it's a goblin he hasn't seen before, so he worriedly asks how it could be so quiet. Right then, another goblin shows up in front of him out of nowhere and strikes him down with his spear, excitedly telling him, of course, it's because of the silent step skill. He shouts, leader's order, kill everyone in the Bloodfang tribe. After that, Lin orders everyone to come to and take them down. Then several other goblins who were hiding using their silent step skill start to show up and start slaughtering the goblins of the Bloodfang tribe. Seeing that, the leader of the tribe horrifiedly thinks, so many goblin warriors appeared. He looks at Lin and understands that it was his plan all along. The leader gets frustratedly realizing that this guy negotiated with them just to make them drop their guard. Their attention was all on this guy. He comes to the conclusion that he has to run. They're no match for him, and if he wants to escape, no one can stop him. So then, the Bloodfang leader hurriedly rushes toward Lin and tries to punch him with that other hand that's still intact, furiously telling him that even if he escapes, he'll kill him, calling him an ugly creature. But right then, Lin calls Ifraya, and Ifraya uses her holy light prison. Immediately, a powerful prison of light materializes around the leader, which startles him and he asks what. He frustratedly says, damn it, it's a light attribute spell, and a goblin can't use light spells. Then his eyes start boiling hot red with anger, as he sees Ifraya at Lin's feet, calling him master, and Lin happily tells her she really is a good dog. After turning dark, she has become even stronger. Then she tells her to go back and get her rewards. Hearing that, Ifraya excitedly keeps calling him master. A while later, Lin ties up the Bloodfang leader using chains of light magic, and the leader irritatedly calls him a damn brat. At that, Lin giggles and tells him to obediently become his heroic raisin goblin. After that, Lin takes him back to his village and ties him up to a large rock. Then he releases a sigh and says subduing him really took quite some effort. Finally, all the busy work is done, and now there's no longer any threat, as he cleans blood off of his dagger. Seeing that, Loder finds it hard to believe that they actually captured a hero seed, and worriedly wonders, this beast, how on earth he did it. After that, you and Holy Mother come there, and Lin tells you that the task of artificial insemination can be handled by the other goblins. She just needs to keep an eye on them. You agrees and says she will. Then Lin tosses Ifraya at her and tells her, as for her, he'll leave her to her. Also, he tells Ifraya to be prepared, he needs to listen well. And Yu nervously says she got it. After that, as Lin cleans his hands in water the Holy Mother Leah brought, he tells her to help him get dressed later, as he needs to go meet a friend, which surprises Leah. Lin removes the hood on him, telling her with a sly smile on his face, that's right, a very important friend. He understands that judging by Loder's arrogance, human reinforcements will likely arrive at Bright Town soon. With their current strength, they could still face off against the knights. But if they encounter the Sword Saintess, it'd mean certain death, and growing the hero seed goblin still needs time, so he must find an ally to stall the Sword Saintess. Lin comes to the conclusion that it's time to go meet the mother of the purple gold dragon. But as he reaches the beach, he thinks the Dragon Island is at least 100 kilometers away, and the quickest way to reach Dragon Island is to summon a dragon, so he carries a few dead cows there. Lin believes that with such a strong scent of blood, he should be able to lure a flying dragon soon. Right then, he hears a dragon screech as it's flying toward him at high speed. Then he hurriedly gets into one of the carcasses by cutting a hole in its belly, thinking, as expected, they've caught the scent of blood and arrived. In a matter of seconds, the dragon arrives at the beach, picks up the carcasses, and then it starts flying back toward the Dragon Island, so Lin excitedly thinks it's a success. After a while, they reach Dragon Island, and the dragon drops the carcasses along with Lin inside a hole in the ground covered by some rocks. The cow carcasses fall on a pile of bones. Then Lin gets thinking, just as he predicted, these dragons aren't hunting just for themselves. Now, all that's left is to find the dragon mother as he tries to jerk the dirt off of his body. But then suddenly, the dragon mother of the purple gold dragon shows up behind him and says there's something strange mixed in with the food, which startles Lin. Then the dragon mother says wait, she thinks she recognizes him. He's the goblin leader who attacked Bright Town that day, so she asks what he's sneaking into her territory for. She asks Lin if she believes she won't eat him, as other dragons also start to come out and surround Lin, seeming wary of him. At that moment, Lin tells her to wait, he's there this time to discuss cooperation. Hearing that, the dragon mother says how peculiar. She amusedly asks if a mere goblin wants to negotiate with her, and transforms into her human-like form, telling him that since he has helped her before, she'll listen. The dragon mother adds that if he can make her happy, she might choose not to eat him, while the other dragons growl at Lin still being wary of him. Then Lin asks the dragon mother if it isn't right that she seeks revenge on the Sword Saintess as well. How about they join forces, as they should consider it a favor from the last time she helped him escape during the raid. Hearing that, the dragon mother surprisedly asks what, and says, a lowly creature like him, he's actually targeting the Sword Saintess. So then she tells him that he has piqued her interest a little, and asks him to tell her how he wants to plan to deal with that witch. Lin replies it's simple, he just needs her to send her dragon soldiers to occasionally harass Bright Town. At that, the dragon mother puts her hand on his shoulder and asks what about him. She asks him with a smile on her face what a bunch of mere goblins can do. How dare they target that crazy woman, what his plan is. The dragon mother gets close to his face, saying that to deal with someone like the Sword Saintess, direct confrontation won't work. She explains that they have to attack her mind. Killing her spirit is the best way to defeat her. Then the dragon mother realizes something and laughs, saying she understands, using the goblins as tools to kill without sacrificing her own forces, perfectly in line with her desires. So, Lin asks her if they shall consider their deal sealed. The dragon mother says naturally, but she holds his face, asking who would have thought that a goblin could be so clever, as the more she looks at him, the more she likes him. Then the dragon mother licks her lips, as she erotically asks Lin how about she gives him a little reward. Hearing that, Lin nervously thinks the female dragons in the raising season are really something. But then, the dragon mother comes to a conclusion and says that's right, his small body is really not worthy of her attention. She tells him, in that case, she'll give him some other rewards first, and wonders which one she should choose. Sometime later, at the Tianquang tribe village, Loader, who's placed on a cross, worriedly thinks it's been so long, and wonders why the knights haven't come to rescue him yet. He believes that if he stays there any longer, he's going to break apart, so he has to escape. But how he escapes from there? Goblins are everywhere. Loader thinks that's it. From above, goblins are very short, so if he could get to a higher place. But right at that moment, he gets shocked to see something and stutteringly says, "That's." Then he starts screaming, saying that's a dragon, a wyvern, as he sees one flying straight at them. Loader shouts at the goblins to let him go, as he doesn't want to be burnt to death by dragon fire, while the goblins seem to be in disarray. A goblin general orders the goblin soldiers to be on guard, and worriedly says it's a dragon, why it's there. But right then, the elf Holy Mother Leah sees something and tells them to wait and look, as there seems to be someone on the dragon. After that, the dragon lands on the ground inside the village, and Lin climbs down from the dragon, which surprises the others. Lin pats the scarlet dragon that flew him there and tells her to rest there well, and not wander around. Then as he turns toward his fellow goblins, they excitedly cheer for him, saying, "Long live the boss, so cool," and Yu gladly holds his arm. While Loader finds it hard to believe and starts sweating, wondering if this guy really is a goblin, hoping that the Night Order hurries and saves him. In the meantime, at Bright Town Square, high-rank holy knights from the Royal Night Order arrive from the capital on horseback. After they reach the holy church, they get off their horses and kneel before the Sword Saintess. But the Sword Saintess hurriedly tells them that time is running out, so no need for formalities, and next, she orders them to quickly prepare the rescue plan. Sometime later, at the Goblin village, Lin opens the system and uses the simulated life system, as it says the system is launching. Current plot: nurturing the third-generation goblins. By ambushing Bright Town and the Bloodfang tribe, he has achieved remarkable results. He leads Yu and Ifraya to grind levels in the Enchanted Forest to counter the Sword Saintess and the human royal family. The system further says that after 1 month, he will reach level 50, Yu will reach level 60, and Ifraya will reach level 45. Then it gives him 3 choices. Choice 1, continue grinding monsters in the forest to increase strength, score +1. Choice 2, capture prisoners and cultivate more goblins, score +10. Choice 3, jump directly to 1 month later, score +20. Seeing that, Lin surprisedly wonders if it can still be like this. The third option's appearance means there won't be an ambush from the Sword Saintess during this time. So he decides to skip this period and presses the third choice, speed up the leveling process, and jump directly to 1 month later. After that, the system reports to Lin that time acceleration initiated, as the reality around him starts warping. In summary, this enchanted forest can no longer provide sufficient experience. Lin gets startled by that, and then the system says, score 20 points, reward life points time 20. This simulation of life is complete, the time progression is 1 month. After that, Lin quickly opens his eyes as the system reports, time progression, 1 month later. He finds himself in his bed and grabs his head, finding it hurting, wondering if this is what it feels like to skip time. Such a strange reaction. Right then, the system congratulates him on reaching level 50 and shows his stats. Lin thinks the attributes increase quite a bit, but the overall strength hasn't grown that much. He guesses what the reason might be. At that moment, Yu comes running into the room and worriedly tells him that something happened. Many of the newborn goblins are stillborn, which shocks him. Then he rushes outside with Yu and finds the stillborn goblins with their elf mothers, and worriedly wonders if something went wrong. He gets on the ground and regretfully questions how this could happen, and seeing him, the Holy Mother asks if he happens to know why. Right then, Loader shouts with a big smile on his face that he doesn't know what happened. Now only these 3 are still alive from this generation, and they're still very weak. He giggles and calls them foolish goblins, as he asks if they really think they can raise strong offspring. Lin tells him with a grim look on his face that he seems to know the reason, and Loader excitedly explains that the higher the rank of the goblins, the harder it is for their offspring to survive. So he asks Lin if he thought he could rule the world through reproduction, as he laughs and calls him a fool. Hearing that, Lin says he understands, and well, he should thank him for this. Then he walks from there, telling Goblin Berserker that this person is his from then on, but not to kill him while he's playing. The Goblin Berserker laughs and thanks him for that. After that, Loder's smile turns to frown as he frustratedly tells Lin that he's ruthless, so even if he turns into a ghost, he won't let him off, as the Goblin Berserker brings him down to fan some fun. Meanwhile, Lin thinks it's too late to nurture new hero species now, but right now, they desperately need a large number of hero goblins, otherwise, facing the Sword Saintess and her forces. He understands that the chances of victory are very small, so he wonders if there's any way to upgrade the goblins. Right at that moment, the wyvern that brought back Lin from the Dragon Island shows up behind him and starts snuggling him, which surprises him. Then Lin pats her on the face, nervously wondering what's going on with her, if it's a female dragon going into heat and transforming into a demi-human, if this special case could be what he thinks it is. After that, the young wyvern transforms into a humanoid form and looks at him as if she can't control her urges anymore. So Lin understands that this is a special case, and wonders if this is the convenience the dragon mother deliberately left for him, as she starts sweating heavily. Right then, the wyvern pushes him down to the ground to start enjoying herself, which Lin also enjoys. A while later, the system reports to him that new achievement unlocked and congratulates him on the promotion, as his HP, strength, and defense significantly increase from before. After that, Lin limpingly walks as his back hurts, saying damn it, it's just one dragon, but so fierce and ferocious. However, he astonishedly questions if this is the dragon race, as she has evolved into a hero class. She clearly told him that he could evolve if he swallowed her dragon blood, but she did this too. But then, Lin gets startled to hear the wyvern standing behind him, as she growls and excitedly tells him that they should continue, so not leave. At that, Lin hurriedly tells her to wait and points at the other goblin soldiers, saying that she can finish her task before she can continue taking it out on him. So he tells her to go, give them some of her dragon blood, and then come back to him. Immediately, the wyvern starts rushing toward the other goblins and they frightenedly ask Lin what's going on. That night, the goblin soldiers all dance around the bonfire excitedly saying, "Awesome." They all evolved after taking the dragon blood. They laugh and add that they can still evolve. They'll evolve into big guys. While Lin sits on the wyvern's arm as she's resting and thinks it is worthy of being called the legendary dragon race, as not only him, but everyone else also evolved into the hero class. However, he also thinks that the overall strength right now is a bit low. It's time to add some equipment, so he tells the system to open the shop. Then Lin starts browsing through the system shop questions, as the leader of a hero class clan, how he can maintain his prestige without some strength. He checks and sees that his current credit is 180. He thinks it should be enough to exchange for some high quality and useful equipment. Then Lin finds an elemental crossbow and thinks it's light, attacks far, and can also absorb elements. After that, he finds a skill, Blade Stealer, which allows the user to catch a weapon with their bare hands 3 times, and the credit cost is 80. Lin thinks this one is cheaper, but it's a rule-based one. It can target the Sword Saintess and at worst save his life. So he decides to take these 2 and presses the exchange button. The system says exchange successful, and the skills are added to his inventory. Then he says he wonders how useful this high-class weapon is. He needs to find a test subject. At that moment, Lin says right, there's Loder, as his eyes fall on him, which terrifies him, and Lin tells him that he's a great option. After that, as he walks toward Loder, Loder stutteringly asks what he's going to do. And just like that, Loder became the first one to experience how powerful Lin Tian has become. A few days later, a rescue party has arrived at the enchanted forest, of which the mage sarcastically calls for help, and the archer annoyedly says these low-class monsters are so boring. She doesn't understand what's there to fight over. She adds that they should have stayed with the Saintess to guard the town from dragons, but the warrior captain says that the dragon mother disturbs the town frequently, and the Saintess can't be bothered dealing with the goblins. So she left it to them. The captain explains that this is definitely a low-hanging fruit. However, he tells everyone to stay sharp and not waste this opportunity. Right at that moment, the mage warns the other, saying there's something there, and everyone draws out their weapon looking in that direction. Then they find a huge spider in front of them, coming at them fast to attack them, and the mage screams, saying she hates spiders. Immediately, the archer pierces the spider monster's head by shooting an arrow straight at it, and tells the mage with a smile that it's just a class 3 bug, so she asks what's there to scream about. But then, the captain tells them to wait. There's something else, as a huge goblin with arms like spiders shows up in front of them, and the captain surprisedly asks if it's a goblin, and it's hero class. He adds that it looks like this must be the leader, so he excitedly says he can't believe they found him so soon. while the goblin looks at them, burning anger in his eyes. Hearing that, the archer says that's great, now the fame belongs to them. The captain agrees and repeats the same, as they get ready to find the goblin. The captain tells everyone that they should let the crusade begin, and tells the archer to cover him. But then, the tank tells him that there's no rush. He explains that Captain has killed quite a few goblins along the way, so he asks him to give him the credit this time, which surprises the captain. The tank adds that he has killed countless goblins before. However, this will be his first time killing a hero class, to which the captain tells him fine. With him, the battle should be over soon, and the tank tells him to count on him. Then he excitedly tells everyone to watch how he one-shots this guy as he readies his lance, and throws it right at the goblin's chest, using his intermediate combat skill, Raging Vortex Spear, furiously telling him to go die. But then, everyone gets shocked to see that the lance did nothing to the goblin, and the goblin is holding it in his hand. The tank, who's closest to him, trembles in fear, finding it hard to believe, and says it caught it, impossible. Then the huge goblin aims the lance back at them, and is about to swing it with a lot of force, so the captain hurriedly tells the mage to activate her shield. The mage instantly puts up the most powerful shield he can create in front of him, as the goblin throws the lance at them. The shield manages to block the lance, but it starts cracking. Seeing that, the captain frustratedly says he can't believe he has such strength, as he almost broke the shield with just brute force. But the archer says since it's a power type, they just have to stay away, and fortunately, there's only one and her bow and arrows are not just for show. However, right at that moment, a goblin suddenly shows up behind her and pierces her stomach with his hand with an evil smile on his face. Seeing that, the archer terrified says, "Goblin assassin." After that, she falls dead to the ground and the captain frustratedly says they were ambushed. There's an assassin, so he tells the others to stay in formation and surround the long-range troops quickly. And the others say yes, but then the mage worriedly tells the captain to look. The captain does that and gets shocked to find themselves surrounded by even more goblin, so he calls God. Sometime later, the other adventurers also remain fallen unconscious, while the mage coughs and calls for someone to save her. As the huge goblin with 4 arms holds her tightly in his hand, excitedly laughing and saying these are theirs. He looks closely at the mage in his hand and giggles, saying she's his, and he's going to have fun with her. But then, an even bigger goblin walks up beside him and tells him no, these are all the tribe's spoils of war. The boss said they have to capture all the humans they meet. They lost one because he was fooling around. For this, he'll get nothing. Then the goblin with 4 arms frustratedly asks why. They killed so many humans, they are strong now, so from now on they control their spoils of war. The goblin assassin explains to the larger goblin that he's right now they are the strongest, and the tribe should listen to them. Hearing that, the other goblins there also get excited and the goblin assassin tells the big brother goblin that he's the strongest, so they will listen to him. Hearing all that, the bigger goblin looks at his own reflection in his weapons as he gets thoughtful, and then he tells the other that they should bring them back first. After a while, as they return to the Tianquang tribe village, the other goblins there excitedly say, "They're back, the hero classes are back." They amazedly add that they've captured quite a few humans, that's insane, and cheer on for Goblin Tian, as she flexes the humans he captured on his muscular arms. Looking at them, the Holy Mother Leah nervously asks Lin Tian if he's still sure that he can control them, while Lin also has his eyes glued on them. Then Goblin Tian lifts up the human captain's unconscious body and growls, excitedly saying he is his loot. He's going to eat him. But then, Lin walks up to him telling him that this man has the information he needs, so to let him down. However, at that, Goblin Tian tells him with a devilish grin on his face that if he wants him, then to give him his women in exchange. Both Goblin Yu and Holy Mother Leah get startled to hear that, and worriedly ask what. Then Lin puts his hand in front of them, and asks Goblin Tian with a creepy smile on his face if he has any idea what he's saying, as he's his leader. In response, Goblin Tian tells him that Goblin Quang is stronger than him, so they plan on following him from then on. After that, Quang steps forward and stands alongside Tian, as he tells Lin that Goblin Quang is stronger than Goblin Berserker, so Lin tells Goblin Quang that he's the mastermind. Then Lin tells Quang that he'll give him a chance. He captures Goblin Tian for him and he'll forgive him. At that, Tian laughs and tells him that Goblin Quang won't listen to him. He's their new boss. But at that moment, Quang grabs hold of his head with his hand, which startles Goblin Tian. He nervously adds that they'll kill Lin that day and rule the tribe themselves. However, right then, Goblin Quang rips his head off of his body and kills him. Lin doesn't show any reaction to that, while Leah and Yu find the scene really sickening. And the other goblins who were following Tian and Quang stand there stunned and don't understand what to tell Quang. Then Goblin Quang tells Lin, calling him boss, that after leveling up, he seems to understand many things. He explains that unlike these arrogant idiots, he respects him. However, he also respects absolute strength, which surprises Lin a bit. Then Goblin Quang calls Lin his father, and tells him in a serious tone that he became the leader after defeating the old leader, now he'd like to try. Hearing that, Lin checks the system to see his stats, and finds that he's level 50. Has high vitality, strength and defense, powerful skills, and an overall combat strength of 1,200. Seeing all that, Lin thinks he understands. This kid dared to challenge him when his comprehensive strength reached 1,200. After that, he starts charging his energy, which frightens the other goblins, and asks Goblin Quang with a terrifying look in his eyes if he's sure he wants to challenge him. Then the goblins on Quang's side start cheering him on, telling him to kill Lin and show him who's boss. That's right, kill him and steal all the women. Hearing that, Lin tells Quang with a smile that it seems like he has quite a few followers, but before they start, he wants to confirm again. He generates powerful flames in his hand and tells the hero class goblins, if they want to continue following him then to stand over there immediately, otherwise they'll all be killed. Seeing their quarrel, the captain of the human party wonders if this is a tribute. He didn't expect that the leader of this group of hero-class goblins would be such an inconspicuous guy. Also, he believes they're lucky that they've been caught during them having internal issues. This is a good chance to escape, as the difference in strength between the two sides is too great. So even if they can use magic, it'll be of no use, and when the old leader dies, they'll find a way to escape. Few moments later, most of the powerful goblins stand beside Lin, and Lin tells Quang it seems like he's the better leader, as only a few were willing to follow him. But Quang raises his weapon at him furiously telling him, no, he's different from them, he merely chooses to pursue strength. And looking at his aura, the human captain thinks this guy, he's even stronger than when he was in the forest. Then Goblin Quang rushes at Lin with a tremendous amount of strength and tries to attack him with his great sword. But Lin easily manages to dodge all the attacks. And seeing that, the human captain astonishedly thinks the other guy can dodge his attacks, how speedy. After that, Lin tells Quang with a smile that he's not bad, and to take this, as he takes out the crossbow he recently got, and shoots a really powerful fire element arrow at him, which startles Quang, as he thinks it's a weapon that he has never seen before, it's so fast. He understands that he can't dodge it, he'll have to tank it, so he rushes forward putting his sword in front of him, and easily manages to disperse the flames. Seeing that, Lin surprisedly says he broke the fireball and charged through. Good endurance. Then Goblin Quang screams, as he gets really close to Lin and tries to strike him with his sword. However, Lin seems unfazed by that and smiles. Right at that moment, a huge explosion occurs there, which shocks everyone around them. Goblin Yu, Holy Mother Leah, and the other goblins who remain loyal to Lin also seem worried. But then, as the smoke from the explosion starts to dissipate, Goblin Quang stutteringly says, impossible, as he finds it hard to believe that Lin stopped his great sword with only one hand. Lin tells him it's a nice strike, he has surprised him, unfortunately. His opponent is him, as he used his Blade Stealer skill, which allows the user to catch a weapon with their bare hands 3 times. At the same time, he points his crossbow using his right hand straight at Quang, and shoots him, which fatally injures him. After that, Lin asks him if he wants to continue, and Quang says no. He bows before him and tells him that he accepts the death penalty. Hearing that from him, Lin surprisedly wonders where he learned this from, and thinks he's quite stubborn. At that moment, the other goblins that decided to go against Lin get on their knees, trembling in fear, and beg him not to kill them, as they don't want to die, and they won't do it again. Hearing that, Lin looks at them and says what a bunch of spineless trash. At that, the goblins start begging even harder, requesting him to spare them, as they'll follow him forever. After that, Lin tells Goblin Quang to rise, as Ifraya uses her light magic on him to heal him, which surprises Quang. Lin explains to him that he has courage, so as long as he remains loyal to him, he won't kill him. Quang surprisedly asks if really, calling him boss. Lin says of course, but he can't forgive these fellows, as he turns to the goblins that decided to betray him, and tells Quang to kill them all. Goblin Quang charges up his magic while thanking him for sparing him, and tells him, from that day onwards, he is willing to follow him forever, so to leave these guys to him. At that, the goblins that had decided to betray Lin and follow him start shaking heavily in fear, and stutteringly beg him to spare them, but then, Quang slaughters them all in an instant. After that, Lin tells the kids to go and devour those rebellious goblins. It'll make them stronger. And the kids rush there, excitedly saying, yes, hooray for the boss, and telling him that they'll stay loyal to him. Seeing all that, the human captain nervously asks Loader who on Earth he provoked, as he's no normal mutated goblin. He's a monster that will shake the whole empire. Then Lin walks toward Loader, apologizing with a smile on his face for making him miss out on that good show. However, he really expected these trash to save him, so Lin amusedly tells him how naive. Hearing that, Loader irritatedly says it's all that sword saintess's fault. All she does is hide in the town. Then he starts laughing like a lunatic saying, trash, they're all trash. The human captain frustratedly tells Lin they really have underestimated him, but not to be so arrogant, as once the saintess takes care of the dragon mother, she'll bring all the other royal knights to kill them. Lin giggles and asks if he really thought that the dragons are attacking Bright Town on their own. But he feels relieved after hearing what he said. It looks like it's going well for the dragon mother too. At that, the captain nervously laughs and says it turns out that the entire Knight's Order and Bright Town were played by them. Then, he tells Lin in a serious tone that he can kill him but not insult him. He has already gotten the information that he wanted, so he asks him to kill him already. The captain explains that if he's going to have the same fate as Loader, he'd rather die, so he requests Lin to let him have it. This surprises Lin a bit and he tells him okay. He'll accept that request, as he fulfills his last wish. The next day in the morning, the sword saintess suddenly wakes up hearing a knight restlessly calling her. She gets up and asks the knight why he's so flustered, if they didn't just repel the dragons, so if it could be that the knights have returned. The knight tells her yes, but, hearing that, the saintess worriedly asks, but what? She tells him to tell her, and the knight replies that they were annihilated. Only one person returned. The sword saintess gets shocked to hear that and asks what he just said. After that, she rushes to the infirmary, where a healer reports to her that the knight is too badly injured, and healing potions won't help him anymore. Then the sword saintess asks the knight how he's injured so badly and what about the other knights. The tank of the human party coughs and laboredly tells her that they've met a group of hero-class goblins, so he requests her to go save the captain and the rest of them. He also tells her to be careful, as they're quite extraordinary, and then he stops talking, which worries the healer there. She hurriedly goes up to the knight and keeps calling him, telling him to stay strong as he stops moving, while a mage concernedly says no way a goblin did this. Right then, the high-ranking knight that was standing there proceeds to leave the room frustratedly asking so what if they're hero class? They'll go destroy those low-level beasts. However, the saintess tells him to hold it. She explains that the dragons are attacking more and more frequently. If they leave, they can attack easily. Moreover, they could easily get ambushed by the goblins, and she can't defeat them alone. So the saintess orders to send more support over to protect Bright Town. When it's time, she'll slaughter those goblins and the purple golden dragon with her own hands. But the knight worriedly tries to tell her about those from the Silver Blade team. At that moment, the mage asks if he thinks they have any chance of survival. Right at that moment, another adventurer enters the room telling Master Sword Saint that there's no need to rescue them. Kasimov, captain of the Reaper Knights team, explains that those who are boastful die first, so it makes sense if the Silver Blade team got too arrogant and died. Then he tells the Sword Saintess to let him rescue and clear out the goblins. Hearing that, the Sword Saintess asks, a whole team got wiped out, and if he wants to go alone. Kasimov laughs and says he has survived 4 Titan warriors alone previously, so even if it's against a group of hero-class goblins, there's no chance they can harm him. As he removes his hat and mask to show them his deformed face because of fighting the Titan warriors, then heads for the Goblin village, telling them to just sit and wait for the good news. Meanwhile, at the village, Lin tells the system to open the simulation panel, and the system says it's loading. Current scenario: defend against the human race. He successfully led the goblins and dragon to victory and constructed a hero-class clan. He destroyed unloyal subjects and established his authority. He gained greater respect from both goblins and dragons. However, under the Sword Saintess's order, Kasimov aka the Grim Reaper snuck into his clan and killed many. Although he retrained him eventually, his class suffers from great losses. Knowing that, Lin surprisedly wonders if he dares to counterattack as a one-man army. How naive. But if one man could really inflict such damage to the clan. The system shows him 3 options: migrate to avoid attack, ambush Kasimov, attack first and kill Kasimov. Lin chooses the third, thinking instead of waiting for him to attack, if they attack first, there will be the least losses. After that, as the system gives the result of the simulation, Lin with a concerned look on his face. It seems like this guy is not some nobody. Before attacking, he'll have to figure out who he is first. So then, he goes to Loder to ask him about him. Hearing that, Loder starts laughing out loud and excitedly says Kasimov is here. He says, finally someone who knows what they're doing, and tells Lin and the others that they are dead meat, as he fought many Titan warriors before. Seeing such excitement from him, Lin says he seems to trust this guy a lot and asks what the Titan warriors are. Then Loder explains that they're soldiers mutated with Titan genes from the enemy country. They can destroy Class 5 beasts with their bare hands. He continues laughing like a maniac and shouts at Lin, telling him that it's over for all of them. Hearing all that, Lin says it seems like Kasimov got something after all, and Loder tells him to just wait to get his back whipped. Then Lin thinks it seems like it's best to be careful. He should send someone to get intel. In the meantime, Kasimov enters the enchanted forest alone and finds that there isn't a single beast in this whole forest, which is way too unusual. After going a bit forward, he finds the remains of the Silver Blade team and thinks of them as a group of trash. Kasimov makes his horse step on the remains, as he laughs and says the fresh smell of blood is quite eerie, and then he wonders if he can enjoy himself this time. But at that moment, he hears someone screaming and calling for someone to save them. They keep requesting. Hearing that, Kamasov hurriedly turns his horse around and worriedly wonders where that's coming from. Then he kicks his horse and hurriedly starts rushing in the direction from which he heard the sound coming. After a while, Kasimov finds a woman sitting alone in the forest, trembling in fear. The woman seems familiar to him, so he confusedly asks who she is. Then the woman turns around, and Kasimov gets shocked to find that it's Ifraya. Then she goes up to him and begs him to save her and help her, calling him by his name, and Kasimov surprisedly tells her she's somehow not dead. She managed to survive. So then he asks where Loder is, but Ifraya cries, telling him that he escaped from the Goblin tribe, and Loder is dead. Hearing that, Kasimov asks in a grim tone if that's so, and then he tells her to tell him where the tribe is at. Ifraya points in a direction and tells him, over there, not far from there, stutteringly adding that they're very scary. Kasimov asks if that's so. Then he hurriedly starts heading in that direction. At that, Ifraya desperately requests him to bring her to safety. But Kasimov tells her to go back herself that way, and not go bother him, as he has got business to do. His class is Solo Knight. When acting alone, he receives a 30% elemental buff, and for every enemy he slays, he receives a 20% buff. There's no limit to the stacking. The effect lasts until the end of battle. Kasimov thinks Loder is really dead. That's good news for him. No one can stop him from activating his Solo Knight skill if he attacks them first and stacks up his buff. So what if they are a hero class tribe? But then suddenly, he gets shocked to notice a rope placed in front of them. However, it's too late, as his horse stumbles because of it and falls over. But as Kasimov is about to fall to the ground, he does a flip and lands on his knee, wondering if it's an ambush. Then he gets surprised to see Ifraya going up to him, holding her magic staff in hand, and asks if she hasn't left yet. Immediately, Ifraya raises her staff and attacks Kasimov using her skill, Holy Light Strike, which lands a direct hit on him. Kasimov finds it hurting. Then he confusedly asks Ifraya what she's doing, to which she tells him that the master told her to kill him. Immediately after that, she again tries to attack him with her Holy Light Blast. However, this time, Kasimov uses his own skill, Soul Reaper, to dodge it. Then he shows up behind her as he grabs hold of her, furiously calling her a dog, and asks what spell she's under, that she dares to attack him, while Ifraya yelps in pain. Kasimov excitedly saying if that's so, he won't either, and asks if she really thinks he only likes to kill monsters, as he takes out his sword and proceeds to kill her, saying this is a good chance for him to stack his buff. But right then, Lin says no wonder he came alone, and Kasimov gets startled to find that the sword disappeared from his hand. After that, he hurriedly looks as Lin tells him, holding his sword, that his class skill and equipments are both hard to deal with. He learns that the sword's skill, Death Reaping, is a high-speed AoE attack, which increases critical damage by 90%. So he tells Kasimov that if he successfully ambushes them and stacks his buff, his tribe would have suffered great losses, while Kasimov worriedly wonders how this low-class goblin instantaneously stole his weapon. Then Ifraya frees herself and runs toward Lin, calling him master. Seeing that, Kasimov asks if it could be that he told her to attack him. He frustratedly curses Ifraya, as she dares to sell herself to the goblins as a slave to survive. But Lin asks so what, she's a good dog, as he pats her on the head. However, he glares at Kasimov, telling him that he disappoints him. He thought he was strong, but it turns out that he's just some creep who likes to assassinate. Then Kasimov starts charging his energy, saying although he doesn't know how he gathered intel about him, but he furiously tells him that against lowly goblins like him, even without his weapon or his buff skill, he will still send him to hell. As Kasimov takes out another blade and rushes at Lin with a lot of strength and speed, with immense killing intent. But right at that moment, a few powerful hero-class goblins and the dragon that's staying in the goblin village come out of hiding and stand behind Lin, which shocks Kasimov. After that, Lin tells him with a devilish grin on his face that he'd like to see who goes to hell first. Immediately, the dragon breathes insanely powerful flames straight at Kasimov, and Kasimov screams as loud as he can due to the immeasurable pain as he's getting burned alive. The next day in the morning, at the Tianquang tribe village, as Lin returns with Kasimov's corpse, the goblins in the village excitedly say boss is back, and look, the boss even brought the prey back. Then Loder gets shocked as Lin tosses Kasimov's corpse at him and asks if this is the so-called all-powerful Grim Reaper. What a pity, after all, overestimating oneself only leads to death by his hands. Loder frustratedly says, another one down, another one dead. He calls the Sword Saintess a despicable witch. Sending people to protect the small fry in Bright Town has only led to them becoming fodder for goblin leveling up. He questions what kind of lousy strategy that is, so he tells Lin that he suspects she's actually in league with him. Next, Lin places the corpse in front of the other goblins thinking they need to prioritize cultivating rare goblin types, and those corpses provide prime nutrients, so they must be fully utilized. Then he tells Goblin Shan that this prey is for him first, and to share the leftovers with the others. Hearing that, Shan immediately proceeds to eat his corpse, excitedly thanking Lin for it, while the other goblins beside him eagerly wait for their turn to feast. Lin understands that evolving into a rare type requires innate talent and genes. Shan has been chosen because he has the most potential. He's both hypocritical and sadistic, perfect for nurturing rare types. So he's already looking forward to the existence of these rare beings. As for the Sword Saintess, he checked with the system before. She only commands 3 knight squads, and the Silver Blade squad has already fallen into his hands. Lin believes once the news of Kasimov's defeat spreads, it'll surely crush the Sword Saintess's morale, and she'll definitely make some moves to turn the situation around. So now is the best time to use the simulation system to probe the future, as he calls the system and tells it to start the simulation. After a while, as Lin goes through all the options, he excitedly laughs thinking, the Sword Saintess, she truly is a greedy saint, and it seems that in this game, he's the one who's won in the end. Then he calls Goblin Quang and orders him to go gather all the goblins at once, as the next day, he's leading them all to accomplish something big, which excites the goblins, and Quang says at his command. After that, Lin thinks with a terrifying look on his face that this time, it's his turn to eradicate them. Sometime later, at Bright Town, the Sword Saintess asks where this was discovered, as a knight brings Kasimov's leftover bones before her. The knight worriedly reports to her, addressing her as his lord, that it was found outside the city, while the Sword Saintess seems speechless. Then the high-ranking mage says in a distressed tone, in just over a day, and the knight frustratedly asks how those lowly beasts could have killed Kasimov. At that moment, the Sword Saintess says that their repeated failures in eradicating the goblins, and the frequent bother by dragons, cannot be mere coincidences. She irritatedly adds that this must be a scheme between those vile dragons and the goblins, using Bright Town's civilians as leverage. They aim to trap them there. They cannot afford to remain passive any longer. So the Sword Saintess furiously orders the Battle Roar squad, all members, to head to the capital for reinforcements at once, and the knights tell her yes. Then they immediately set out for the capital. But the scout of the team tells the captain that even if they rush to the capital on war horses, the fastest round trip would still take 4 days. Also, he asks if they all leave, what about the city's defenses? He's fast on his feet, so he asks him to let him go alone for reinforcements, and they all stay behind to protect the Saintess and guard the city. At that, the mage tells him that he doesn't understand. This is the Saintess's plan, as if they encounter a goblin ambush, at least someone can escape to report and bring back more help. Defeating monsters outside the city wouldn't be a problem. However, they are beyond what the knight squads can handle alone, and the Saintess wouldn't risk leaving the town, fearing one of these factions might launch a sneak attack. The captain says exactly. The Saintess's plan is to protect both the Battle Roar Squad and Bright Town by breaking out to seek reinforcements. He shouts at everyone with a determined tone that they must break through quickly, and the scout says, so that's the reasoning. But then, the captain halts his horse and tells everyone to wait, as they find themselves in front of a cliff with no path to cross. The mage anxiously tells the captain that the bridge has been destroyed, so she asks what now. She adds that the bridge was deliberately destroyed, so she suggests to the captain that they should detour. But the captain says no, they can't. This is likely a ploy to make them take a detour, and set an ambush halfway. If the bridge is destroyed, they surely won't come this way again. This place is the safest. So then, he orders everyone to cut down some trees and rebuild the bridge as they cross before nightfall. By dusk, they manage to finish building the new bridge and put it in place, and the captain says finally, it's done. Then he starts rushing forward on his horse, telling the other that time is short, so to hurry across, as the others follow after him. But as they reach the middle of the bridge, the mage looks up and surprisedly says strange, as she asks why it suddenly got dark. At that moment, the captain also looks up and gets startled to see something coming at them. He terrifiedly shouts, not good, it's a dragon, as the dragon that was with Lin comes down over them from the sky. Then the captain tells everyone to wait and look. On the dragon's back, it's a goblin, as he notices Lin, and infuriatedly says these goblins and dragons are indeed in league. At that, Lin laughs and says they really work fast, but instead of taking a detour, they built a bridge there, so he asks if they were worried that he'd ambush them on the other side. Hearing that, the captain says, so, it was he who destroyed the rope bridge, and furiously shouts at him that he'll kill him himself. But right then, the dragon shoots powerful flames at them, and the captain screams, run, it's dragonfire, as the knights hurriedly head back to where they came from. After that, the bridge they just built gets burnt down and destroyed due to the intense flames, and the mage worriedly tells the captain about it. Seeing that, the captain frustratedly says damn goblins. He'll capture them and torture them to death. Lin asks if that's so, then they should see if he can defeat his goblins and the dragon mother who's on her way. Right then, the scout of the night squad worriedly tells the captain that there are goblins. They're surrounded, and asks if that means even the wyvern corps might be coming. The mage tells the captain that if the wyverns arrive, they stand no chance, but the captain says no, this is an opportunity. If they can hold out, this is a great chance to solve the crisis in Bright Town. He tells the scout Bane that they'll hold them off, and he'll use sprint to break through and report back. Bane tells him he understood. Then the captain lets out a thunderous roar and rushes at the goblins with everything he has, calling them damn monsters and saying they even gathered on purpose. While Bane knocks away the smaller goblins on the other side and tries to sprint past them as fast as he can. He manages to escape their attacks and rushes into the forest, telling them that as soon as the Saintess arrives, they'll wipe them all out. However, the goblins don't chase after him and seem to be enjoying seeing how the humans are acting. Seeing that, the mage anxiously tells the commander no, something's off. She explains that this isn't a breakout, the goblins are deliberately letting Bane escape. She looks up at Lin, shouting, this might be the goblins' plan. And the captain also seems horrified, realizing how terribly wrong he was. Then Lin tells them that's right, there's no dragon mother, it's just a trick to lure that foolish woman out of Bright Town. And asks with a devilish grin on his face if they can guess what will happen after the Saintess leaves Bright Town. What will happen to Bright Town? He wonders. Hearing that, the captain screams and tells the other to take down the one riding the dragon. Bright Town is already lost, so they must hold on until the Saintess arrives, and the others say yes. Then the captain rushes at the goblins with his huge battle axe, and Goblin Quang comes at him with a sword to face him. Right as both of their weapons clash, the insane shockwave it creates bursts the ground below their feet. The captain frustratedly thinks their strength matches him. Then he realizes that this sword is Kasimov's and gets pushed back by the Quang. Seeing that, Lin continues smiling as if watching an insect and tells him he's not so tough himself. Then he brings out his crossbow, telling the others that time is short, so to finish the knights before the Saintess arrives, as he jumps down from the dragon to join in on the slaughtering. A short while later, the knight captain is fallen on the ground before Lin, badly injured, while his subordinates are already being feasted on by the goblins. Then Lin toys with the captain by kicking him up high and then pushing him back down using his skill gale suppression, which severely hurts the captain, and he frustratedly thinks he can't hold on. He looks to the side and sees his comrades getting eaten alive, regretfully thinking, it's him. He underestimated these goblins. Right then, Lin shoots him right in the head using his crossbow and kills him. After that, he tells the Goblin Shan in a serious tone that their time is running out. to quickly devour these corpses before the saintess arrives. Shan excitedly tells him yes, and thanks him for it. Sometime later, the sword saintess arrives at that place with a bunch of capable knights behind her. But then, she gets shocked to see something there and asks if they're already too late. Bane of the Battle Roar squad runs forward, calling the captain, as only the bones of his comrades remain there. He touches the captain's corpse, crying and frustratedly saying, "Damn it, he'll avenge them all." The sword saintess steps forward, finding it all too hard to process, as she sadly says not even bodies remain. So then, she asks if the dragons are joining forces with goblins again, and Bane hurriedly tells her that he saw a goblin in this group that can control dragons. He must be the leader. The sword saintess gets shocked to hear that, and then Bane explains that he ordered the dragon to breathe fire and destroy the rope bridge. Also, the captain and the others must have been killed by the goblins and then burned by dragon fires, so he tells her that she must annihilate them. The saintess thinks, no wonder only a small area is scorched by dragon fire there. The remaining bones seem more like goblin leftovers, so she wonders if there are not many dragons coming. But then, at that moment, she seems thunderstruck as she finally understands what's truly happening. The saintess screams, "Oh no, it's a decoy strategy," and hurriedly starts rushing back toward Bright Town, ordering the knights to quickly return, as something's going to happen there. However, after they reach the town, Bane seems completely stunned seeing what has happened to it, and says no, this can't be real. They find Bright Town completely destroyed, the structures all demolished, and many of the citizens dead or injured beyond recovery, which devastates the sword saintess. Then she falls to the ground on her knees and horrifiedly wonders how this could happen. It can't be true. The saintess looks to the side as she hears a young boy crying and calling for his dead father. She walks up to him to try and console him. But then, the boy tosses her hand away, furiously telling her to get out. Every day, she's just pretending to work so hard to protect them. But when the goblins came, she was nowhere to be seen. She's a bad person, which shocks the saintess. Then she finds everyone angry at her, asking who wants her apology if she can't protect them. What kind of saintess she is. They wasted raising her. They need her, yet she can't even protect them. The legendary sword saintess finds it hard to believe that the citizens she swore to protect are now rebuking her, and doesn't understand what to say. Then she starts coughing blood and falls to the ground, while the citizens furiously keep asking what kind of saintess she is. She can't even protect them, she's useless, so they tell her to get out. Seeing all that, the dragon mother says Lin Tian actually did it, without even facing them directly. They can turn the human sword saintess into a defeated, broken person, completely destroying her spirit. And because of that, she adds in an excited tone that she really looks forward to meeting that Lin Tian guy. That night in the Tianquang tribe village, as Lin returns with the goblin soldiers, he too with him. The goblin captain that returned from Bright Town excitedly says, "Boss is back." Then Lin asks Goblin Dai how he handled the task he entrusted to him with that day. Any complications? And Dai reports that the city raid went smoothly. They also brought back plenty of spoils and prisoners. He excitedly shows him a few women trapped in a cage, telling him that some even surrendered voluntarily to save their lives and came back as their captives. Additionally, as per his orders, they sent a cart of gold to Kelia and escorted her and her family out of the city. After hearing all that, Lin tells Goblin Dai well done. From that day onwards, he and Goblin Shan can prioritize devouring magical creatures, and Goblin Dai gladly tells him he understood. Lin thinks Kelia was the only one who believed in him in his previous life, so sending her away from this place of strife is his way of repaying her, and this time, he believes the sword saintess has completely broken down. The next day in the morning, he heads to the Dragon Island and tells the Dragon Mother that it's all thanks to her assistance. The Dragon Mother says she heard that the saintess has fallen ill and cannot get out of bed. It truly is gratifying. However, Lin asks her to continue sending dragons to harass Bright Town to keep pressuring the saintess. Hearing that, the Dragon Mother goes up to him and asks now what kind of reward she should request as compensation, as flying back and forth every day is exhausting. Lin tries to tell her to look at all the cattle he brought of her, but right at that moment, the Dragon Mother gets close to him and kisses him, which surprises Lin. Then she tells him with a look on her face that what he wants is him, and asks how about it. Hearing that, Lin asks if she wants him, and if she's joking with him, but the Dragon Mother pushes him onto the ground, telling him she doesn't mind if he got the Dragon Mother's belly swollen. But she also tells him not to misunderstand, as if he refuses her, she'll be very upset. At that, Lin nervously tells her not to get him wrong, he just thinks that is a weak little goblin. How he could be worthy of the Dragon Mother. Then the dragon mother reveals her human skin, telling him that he's no ordinary goblin. She sees the potential of a goblin king in him. She explains that their ancient dragon race has always revered strength. It is in her nature that she only desires to raise with strong beings and produce strong offsprings. Lin tells her with a smile that he can only have one choice, and he'll humbly accept as the two of them start having fun. At the time, the other dragons inside the dragon cave stay at a distance so as not to disturb them. After Lin and the dragon mother are done, the system notifies Lin saying, "Achievement unlocked," and congratulating him, as all his stats increase significantly. Lin seems amazed because of gaining this many stats for free, but he better sneak away while the dragon mother is asleep. So he wakes up the dragon mother gave him before and starts flying back to his tribe thinking, this dragon mother is incredibly formidable. If he's forcibly kept again, that'd be troublesome. After a while, the dragon mother wakes up and thinks he truly is just as she imagined. Perhaps one day, he will lead the goblins to create a whole new world. Sometime later, after Lin returns to the goblin village, Kasana shouts asking what if he's trying to drive them away, and the elf holy mother also seems shocked. Lin explains now that there are human captives to replace them for reproduction. He's letting them go free, thinking elves have more uses than humans. So instead of forcing them, he wonders why not gamble and try to win their loyalty, while Leah tells Kasana and the rest of the elves if they wish to go they may go, which worries Kasana. Then Leah kneels before Lin and tells him from what she has seen during this time, it's clear that he's no ordinary goblin, so she asks if she may remain in the tribe and follow him. Lin tells her with a smile she's clever, she may have value if she stays, and he promises not to trouble other elves, thinking she chose to stay because she sees him as a potential asset for the elves. But then, Kasana frustratedly calls her dear mother and asks how she could decide to stay on her own. She too kneels before Lin and tells him that from then on, she will only follow dear mother and the leader. She also will not leave, she wants to stay as well, and the other elves follow her. Lin excitedly thinks it's as expected. Then he tells them that since they have chosen to stay, they are no longer captives but his subordinates, and he will guarantee their safety. The elves thank him for that, calling him leader. Lin understands that with the sword saintess down and no external threats, it's the best time for the golden era of development, so it is necessary to cultivate many heroic beasts. But then, Goblin Quang flusteredly tells him that this human is too small for him, which makes Lin nervous as he doesn't know the solution to that. Seeing him thoughtful, Leah suggests to him that they can assist with artificial raising, and Lin says it seems that's the only way. However, at that moment, another goblin comes rushing at Lin, calling him boss, and tells him that Goblin Tian appears to have died, so he requests him to go quickly and see, which shocks Lin. Then he hurriedly goes there and finds Shan fallen dead on the ground, with his whole body covered in deep scratches, so Lin asks what happened. And the goblins there say they have no idea. They explain that he was hiding there, scratching himself like mad, and he died scratching himself to death. But right then, Goblin Chan's body starts shaking and some weird traits start coming out as he starts mutating. Seeing that, the goblin that brought Lin there hurriedly hides behind him and frightenedly asks if Goblin Chan actually revived. Lin checks the system and finds that Chan is now level 50, a mutant goblin, berserker, with really high stats and powerful skills. Lin nervously thinks that if it weren't for the stats he gained from the Golden Mother Dragon, he might have not have survived this. Then Shan excitedly jumps around telling Lin that he didn't die and even got stronger. Lin says not bad. His strength and wisdom have grown. So he tells him to focus on cultivating the next generation of goblins, to which Goblin Shan tells him yes boss, and immediately goes after Lily to continue raising. 3 months later, at Bright Town, inside a tavern, people are busy enjoying drinks and food, while a guy asks his friends what they all think. It's been so long now, if the sword saintess can recover, to which one of his friends says he doubts it, as he'd have gone mad long ago, and they laugh. Right then, a person enters the cavern and dismissively says, just a bunch of goblins, only the Bloodstorm heroes can handle them properly. The others immediately look at that person and recognize that it's the diamond-ranked Blizzard hero captain, as they surprisedly say it turned out to be His Highness, Sir Earl. At the same time, in the Goblin Village, the system tells Lin that after 3 months of steady raising, he has amassed 150 heroic goblins. Meanwhile, the royal family issued 3 bounty notices, a reward of 100 gold coins, so adventurer groups of various ranks are flocking to Bright Town with one goal, to eliminate his tribe. Then the system summarizes that he'll face diamond and epic ranked opponents, so to prepare accordingly, rating 10 out of 10. This simulation has ended, and advancing the timeline by 1 month. Learning all that, Lin nervously thinks diamond-ranked adventurers are already among the elite of humanity, not to mention the strength of epic rank, which surpasses even the Sword Saintess. He seems totally clueless as to what he should do and worriedly wonders if there's no prompt or guide this time, if it's entirely up to him. Right then, Leah walks up to him along with Yu to give him report, calling him boss, and Lin asks her what's wrong. Leah reports that the new goblins have mostly matured, but forest resources are running low, so everyone is starting to go hungry. Also, the nearby iron mines are nearly depleted, causing a shortage of weapons and equipment. Lin worriedly thinks the resources there are insufficient, and the situation in Bright Town has become abnormal. It seems they must relocate to a defensible, resource-rich place to settle. So then, he gets up from his chair and tells Leah to give the order to move everyone. Immediately, right now. Yu seems surprised to hear the decision to move so suddenly, but Leah bows before Lin and tells him that she will make the arrangements at once. After a while, all the members of the Tianquang tribe head out together to find a new settlement and find themselves inside a hidden cave. Lin thinks this cave behind the waterfall, with its complex and deep tunnels, is ideal for their new home, as he holds a torch to light up the path ahead. Then he orders Goblin God and Dai to take their people and clear the rubble, also to set up security, and tells Goblin Yu to take care of the captives and children. They all say yes at his command. After that, all the goblins start doing their respective tasks, and sometime later, as most of the cave is cleared up, Lin stands before his fellow tribe members and announces that from then on, this is their new home. He tells everyone to follow his orders, and he'll guarantee they'll live well. But for those who break the rules, the consequence is death. Then everyone starts cheering, saying, the boss's orders are absolute. Lin understands that he has settled the tribe. Next, he should investigate the situation in Bright Town. If what the system says is true, he needs to figure out these adventurers before moving forward with the plan. Meanwhile, at the tavern in Bright Town, as the Earl is having a drink, the bartender calls him Prince Sizer and asks if he isn't supposed to only kill high-level monsters. So if he's planning to take care of the goblins this time too, to which Sizer replies with a smile. It's just that he had to deal with the goblin himself to save his useless cousin, Loader. The bartender says so that's how it is. At that moment, an old man enters the tavern and excitedly calls Sizer. Hearing that, Sizer turns back to look at him, while the old man tells him to take care of it and keep the reward, as he asks what's the point of him coming all this way. He explains that he's taking the bounty for eradicating the goblins, so if he can't participate, Sizer better pay him 1,000 gold coins. The other adventurers there get shocked to see him and ask, what if it's the Grey Hat Mage, Gru? He's there too, the leader of the diamond-level Grey Hat Hero Party. Looking at Gru, Sizer calls him an old man, and says he has got quite the attitude, how dare he. But before he could finish his sentence, a mysterious person starts laughing out loud, asking if they think they can act out just because the Sword Saintess has weakened. As he tells them not to forget that this time that cold-blooded woman is there too, the epic adventurer Lucilina. An adventurer worriedly asks why someone that dangerous would show up. He heard she only cares about money, and she kills everything, good or bad. Another adventurer tells him to shut up already, and asks how dare he talk about someone like her, as she might spill his blood. Then Sizer asks the mysterious person if he's a wandering hero, and if he's also there for the goblins. The person says not interested in goblins. He just came there to maybe slay a dragon for fun. As he adds with a devilish smile that if he can kill a dragon, maybe he'll become an epic level adventurer. But the person tells them to let him warn them not to underestimate goblins. They may be low level, but their evolutionary ability is frightening, especially the mutant species. Gru says he has got a point. He has lived nearly 100 years, and he has seen more goblins than women. He explains that this low-level species has been around since ancient times and remains the enemy of all races. Even after tens of thousands of years, they're not wiped out, which frightens the other adventurers. So Gru annoyedly says exterminating goblins is a hassle, and if it wasn't for the bounty, he wouldn't bother with this mess. Hearing all that, Sizer thinks it's true. Even the Sword Saintess and several Night Orders suffered losses against them. That's why they must proceed cautiously. So then, he asks Gru why they don't team up to deal with the goblins. And once it's done, all the bounty is his. He asks what he says. Gru laughs and says deal. He tells him since he's so generous, he'll team up with him. thinking, if there's danger, let the Blizzard party handle it, and this old man can save his energy. After that, they head out of the tavern to discuss their strategy, where the old man Gru tells Xyzer that in his opinion, they should just take a team and charge straight into the forest, solve it with violence. At that, Xyzer says there are too many unknowns this way, so they should scout and plan specifically. Gru tells him that he's being so cautious, calling him a youngster as it's troublesome, so Xyzer can take care of this themselves. He won't involve himself in this. Right then, Xyzer gets surprised to see a person passing by, wearing full armor, and says what a weirdo. Looking at the person, Gru says he didn't expect Goblin Slayer to be there, so he asks if he cares to talk, while Xyzer stutteringly asks if it's the Goblin Slayer. Then he goes up to him and apologizes as he didn't recognize him. At that, the Goblin Slayer tells him that he doesn't want people to recognize him, and asks if he needs something. Hearing that, Xyzer thinks truly an odd person. Even his voice is disguised. Then Gru laughs and tells him that this man once slaughtered a goblin chief. He adds that it's said he killed thousands of goblins in one battle. Xyzer gets astonished to hear that and asks if seriously, as that's insane. So then, Gru asks the Goblin Slayer why not join them to wipe out the goblins together, addressing him as Your Highness. However, the Goblin Slayer puts his hand on Xyzer's shoulder and walks past him, saying that he doesn't need a team. They'll only slow him down, which startles Xyzer. Hearing that, Gru irritatedly asks the Goblin Slayer what there is to be proud of, and tells him not to come crying for help when the goblins capture him for slaughter. Then he frustratedly walks forward, telling Xyzer to stop wasting time and strike first, not to let this guy steal the glory. Xyzer surprisedly asks now if he's sure he doesn't want to prepare any further. After that, the Goblin Slayer heads out of Bright Town. While sitting at a distance on a cliff, Lin uses his skill, Sharp Eyes, to check his stats. The system shows Goblin Slayer, level 65, human, bloodthirsty, a person who shouldn't exist, massively high health, strength, and defense, with an overall power of 1000 to 3000. Lin gets startled to see a range from 1000 to 3000 stats and wonders what's going on there. He tells the system not to tell him that it's malfunctioning, but the system apologizes to him as there's no issue on this end. But then, Lin gets surprised to find even more adventurers heading out of Bright Town and thinks something's happening. He checks on Xyzer and finds that his class is Holy Knight, possesses monster restraining skills, and his overall strength is about 1300. Lin also checks on Gru and finds that his class is Archmage, possesses many skills, and overall strength is 1400, relatively hard to deal with. After seeing all their stats, Lin feels a bit at ease as he thinks that these two at the diamond level don't seem too bright, so there shouldn't be a big problem. However, he understands that they should definitely keep a closer eye on that Goblin Slayer. Sometime later, the adventurer party reaches the ruins of the Lion Quang tribe and looks around for the goblins. Gru says this is strange. A goblin tribe this big should have been discovered ages ago, as he thinks along the way. They've come across plenty of old battle marks, enough to prove the tribe was somewhere around there. Then Xyzer calls him as he found something and tells him to go check it out, asking what it is. He hands Gru some blonde hair he found on the ground, and Gru raises it to his mouth to examine it. After examining, he says if he's not mistaken, this is elf hair, which surprises Xyzer, and he asks if it could be that the elves are helping the goblins there, as he finds it hard to believe. Gru places the hair in a jar with two peculiar butterflies inside, explaining that they've searched this forest thoroughly. It's not suitable for hiding, so it's more like the elves helped the goblins relocate and covered their tracks. Then he lets go of the butterflies and they start flying in a direction, as Gru says these butterflies are especially drawn to the scent of elves, and maybe they can track the elves and goblins in this way. After that, the adventurers start following the butterflies, but after a while, the butterflies stop at the side of a river. Seeing that, Xyzer says the flower butterflies seem to have lost the scent, so he asks if they crossed the river. He tells Old Man Gru that maybe they should wait for Goblin Slayer to show up, as they only need to make the first move. However, Gru says with a smile, that's unnecessary. He tells Xyzer to look over there, across the river, near the edge of the forest. It's goblins. As they find a goblin, they're heading somewhere in a hurry. Then Xyzer shouts, chase them, and all the adventurers start rushing to the other side of the river to go after the goblin. However, Lin amusedly sees all that from a really high cliff with his dragon companion behind him. He says well done. The prey has taken the bait. Suddenly at that moment, he gets surprised to see the Goblin Slayer on another part of the river walking up to the water. Then the Slayer starts removing his armor, while Lin thinks he originally planned to deal with those two first, but he didn't expect this one to show up as well, and with that smug grin. But then, he gets shocked to find what's underneath all that heavy rusted armor. He finds that it's the body of a woman as she gets into the water to wash her body. Lin questions with a smile if the Goblin Slayer is actually a woman, as he finds that this one doesn't entirely seem human, and her abilities are exceptional. Also, to have the leisure to bathe in a situation like this, he finds that she's definitely unusual. He believes that this is the first time he has felt something so unnatural, like she's deliberately trying to lure him down, so he wonders if it could be that she has noticed him. After that, he hops on the dragon and quickly flies away from there, thinking this woman is a bit tricky, so he'd better deal with the other two first. While the Goblin Slayer looks in the direction he flew away and wonders just what kind of intelligent species he is, she'd love to savor the experience. In the meantime, at a bit of distance from there, the Goblin the adventurer party was chasing is fallen dead on the ground. Then Xyzer gestures to the others to stay where they are, saying that the Goblin has stopped, but he tells them to stay alert, as the Goblin tribe must be nearby. Right at that moment, a bunch of flaming arrows come flying straight at them from above, and seeing that, Gru hurriedly steps forward, telling everyone to get back. It's an ambush, as he points his magic staff at the arrows and shoots a really powerful flame magic at the arrows to stop them from reaching them. After that, they all shoot their fireball spell together, straight at Goblin Quang, which lands a direct hit on him. Then it creates an enormous explosion, while Gru places a magic barrier around him and the other adventurers to protect themselves from the impact. But then, as the flames of the explosion dissipate, Gru shouts asking, "What?" as he and the others get shocked to find the Goblin still standing. Seeing not even a scratch on Quang from that explosive, Gru worriedly asks even after that if they're still alive. At that moment, Xyzer shouts at him to look around, as the goblins are closing in, and they're all elite ones. Seeing that, Gru frustratedly asks why these goblins have iron armor and weapons, and says they can't let them lose, so he tells Xyzer that he's leaving this to him, as he hurriedly plants his magic staff into the ground and activates his skill, Fountain of Life, which creates a magic circle under the whole party and starts restoring their energy. Then the mages all shoot the most powerful offensive spell they got at the goblins: mid-tier magic Ice Spike, mid-tier magic Quicksand Field, and mid-tier magic Rain of Judgment. The adventurers spend every last bit of their strength to barely put up a fight against the insanely strong goblins, while Lin keeps an eye on the fight from above. Then he orders Goblin Dai to try and create an opening for Goblin Quang to charge in, and Dai tells him he got it. Immediately, at that moment, he jumps down the cliff and lands on his feet, making a big impact. Dai rushes toward Gru at a tremendous speed, bearing out his claws aiming at Gru's face, which startles him. He moves away at the last moment and barely manages to save his face from getting shredded. However, Goblin Dai still manages to leave a scratch on his face. At that, Old Man Gru looks at him and furiously calls them damn goblins. Right then, Goblin Quang takes the chance to rush forward and charges in with the other goblins. Xyzer shouts at everyone not to be afraid and tells the shield bearers to hold the line. However, they start to get thrown back one after another by the goblins and get badly hurt. Finding no other way, Xyzer starts charging his energy, calling on the Holy Lord and telling him that he calls upon his power to smite these vile creatures. And then he uses advanced magic, Holy Light Enchantment, which creates a ginormous fiery vortex of light magic, and Xyzer manages to take down the goblins close to them. Then he hurriedly orders his subordinates to surround the injured and heal them quickly, while they're still trapped by quite some goblins from all sides. Xyzer infuriatedly says that they will kill them all, and Lin thinks it's a diamond-ranked adventurer party. Their abilities are way beyond what he expected. He understands that for any other goblin tribe, they'd probably be invincible, but he says with a devilish grin that unfortunately for them, they came to the wrong place. As right then, Goblin Shan arrives there and enters the battle. Old Man Gru gets shocked to see him and says, "Damn it, it's a mutant goblin." While the Goblin Slayer giggles and says, "Goblins really are such fascinating and powerful creatures." Some moments later, Gru lets out a loud scream and coughs out blood, as Shan got to him in an instant and shoved his sharp tail right into his stomach, while the other adventurers are also caught or dead. Goblin Shan finds it really enjoyable. Then he drops Gru's body in front of Xyzer, who's also badly wounded, and finds it hard to believe. He seems terrified as he stutteringly calls Gru's name and says "damn it." Then Gru tries to call him and begs him to help him. He tries to move his hand towards Xyzer to grab him, which frightens him and he hurriedly moves back, while his eyes turn red with shock. Then he gets up and hurriedly starts running away from there, screaming, "These goblins are actual demons." Gru seems stunned to find that Xyzer abandoned him and keeps calling him, requesting him to help him, as Goblin Shan pulls him closer to eat him. Meanwhile, as Xyzer is desperately trying to escape, he's continuously getting arrows shot at him from above and screams, "Damn it, he should have known there were elven snipers lurking too." He shouts asking who'll save him. At that moment, he gets surprised to find the Goblin Slayer standing ahead and hurriedly runs toward him begging him to save them. Right at that moment, a few goblins catch up and lunge at him aiming their weapons at him. However, in the blink of an eye, the Goblin Slayer grabs their weapons and shoves them right back into them, pinning them down in an instant. Seeing that he's safe, Xyzer starts thanking the Goblin Slayer with a desperate look on his face and tells her that he'll definitely repay her. But then, the Goblin Slayer asks him with a terrifying look in her eyes if he'll repay her. Then she tells him to stay far away from her. The farther, the better, calling him a ridiculous little kid. Then Xyzer warns her not to go, as this isn't an ordinary goblin tribe. There's definitely a goblin overlord. But the Slayer asks if really, as the more hope, the better, only then she can feel happy. Meanwhile, Goblin Quang lifts Gru holding his head, excitedly wondering how he should enjoy eating him. But then, suddenly, a sword comes flying at him out of nowhere and stabs him in the arm, which startles him. Then he loses consciousness and falls to the ground. Seeing that, all the other goblins there get confused and don't understand what they should do. Lin, who's still on the cliff high above the ground, gets surprised to see a goblin frenzy and questions what's going on. After that, the Goblin Slayer stands in front of Goblin Shan and asks if he's the boss of this goblin group, but says with that dumb look on his face, he sure doesn't look like it. Then Shan furiously tells the others that they should kill this guy, and starts rushing toward her. However, at that moment, the Goblin Slayer readies her broadsword and thrusts her whole body forward at lightning speed, tossing away the goblins in her path in one fell swing. Lin gets shocked to see that and wonders what's this guy's deal. Checking her skills in the system, it's just normal attacks like basic strikes, so if it could be that she actually knows magic. Meanwhile, Goblin Shan seems to be boiling with anger seeing such massive strength of the Slayer. So then, he uses his skill, Mad War Transformation, which enlarges the spikes all around him and reinforces his whole body. Then he starts rushing straight at the Goblin Slayer with everything he has. The Slayer doesn't plan to move out of the way nor defend herself seeing that. Then suddenly, she shows up right in front of Shan and asks if he's a raging bull, which terrifies Shan. After that, the Slayer giggles as she breaks apart all the scales on Shan's body in a flash using her rusted sword. Immediately, before Shan could realize what's happening, the Slayer turns around and lunges at him, aiming to swing her sword at him with an insane amount of strength, furiously telling him to die already. However, at the last moment, Goblin Shan moves away from there while dropping some kind of sticky substance on the Slayer's body. It restricts them from moving forward, and they frustratedly say, "Damn it, their body's stuck." After that, Lin gets on the dragon wondering if they should retreat while they can. But this one has a lot of mysteries and is also an excellent raising tool, and since a direct fight isn't working, they'll switch to a war of attrition. So then he orders everyone to back off a bit and form a circle to keep their distance, and if they've got rocks, to throw them, if they've got long-range attacks, to use them. Looking at him, the Goblin Slayer surprisedly questions if it's a goblin that can tame dragons. She knew this place wouldn't let him down. But then, she gets startled to find a few huge boulders rolling down the mountain right beside her. At the last moment, she swings her broadsword at the boulders and slices them into pieces to avoid getting hit by them. However, that takes a lot out of the Goblin Slayer, as she plants her sword on the ground and gets on her knee looking exhausted. Seeing that, Lin thinks with a smile on his face that they've been fighting for over an hour, and it looks like she's about to collapse. But then, the Goblin Slayer takes off her helmet and reveals her beautiful face to the Goblin soldiers, which puts them under influence of charm magic, and they remain standing in one place, as they lose their motivation to fight. Seeing that from a distance, Lin seems confused as to what's happening, while the Goblin Slayer walks up to Gru and rips out his heart right from his chest with her bare hand. Then she excitedly eats it saying, "The heart is the best kind of nourishment." At that, Lin shouts, no, he underestimated her. But it's too late, as the Goblin Slayer, with her energy replenished, rushes forward and rips through the Goblin soldiers one after another, while using the system only tells Lin that it's a forbidden technique. At that moment, Goblin Shan runs toward the Slayer furiously calling her a filthy woman and telling her to die. But in the blink of an eye, the Goblin Slayer throws a blade straight at him which pierces his chest. Then the Goblin Slayer excitedly tells it to bloom. Immediately, the sword causes a big explosion, which severely injures Shan and he falls to the ground, incapable of moving for a long time. Seeing that, Lin frustratedly wonders what she really is, as she even has a goblin's devouring ability. And given the situation, the best option is to reduce casualties and retreat. So he calls Ifraya and tells her to go with him, as she's busy healing the wounded goblins, and orders everyone else to retreat immediately. But then, the Goblin Slayer tells him to wait and says she hasn't seen such a smart and powerful goblin in ages. She tells him that if he lets her get a closer look, she'll not only spare their lives but also heal the one hit by the dagger. At that, Lin asks if she really thinks he'd believe that nonsense, which surprises the Goblin Slayer, and she asks if he doesn't believe her. So she starts removing her armor and puts down her weapon. Then she asks if now he believes her. Lin seems a bit shocked to see that she actually dropped her weapon and lowered her guard, so he wonders what this woman is planning. After that, he gets down from the dragon, telling the Goblin Slayer if that's the case, they should have a proper talk. As Lin walks closer to the Slayer, she says with a smile she finds it hard to believe that he's just a low-tier goblin. That's beyond her expectations. Lin annoyedly tells her that he showed up, just like she wanted, and asks if she didn't say she'd heal them. The Goblin Slayer tells him not to worry, she'll keep her promise, but he'll have to entertain her first, as suddenly she brings out a needle, licks it with her tongue, and then shoots it straight at Lin. The needle hits Lin's shoulder, which startles him, and causes him to get on his knees. Then the Slayer tells him that he may look like a low-tier goblin, but he has the intelligence of a goblin king. So he looks a lot like her type, and that's so exciting. Lin strugglingly tries to get to her, asking if she tricked him. He seems exhausted and finds it hard to move, so he frustratedly thinks he let his guard down, he fell for this crazy woman's trap. But then, Lin gets surprised to find his subordinates suddenly moving and turning the other way, so he shouts at them asking what they're all turning their backs for. The Goblin Slayer explains to him that they're under her control now, and they can't see what they're doing. Then she giggles. After that, she puts herself on Lin's back and puts her arms on his shoulders, which makes him anxious, but the Slayer melodically tells him to relax, as she promises she won't kill him. She whispers into his ear that she'll even stick around with him, and asks him to let her see, as she hurriedly turns his body and pushes him onto the ground. While the Goblin Slayer puts herself on top of Lin and says what kind of being he'll become, which makes Lin really nervous. But before he could say anything, the Slayer kisses him, which shocks him and he wonders, wait, if she's serious. In the meantime, Xizer peeps at them, hiding behind some bushes. Then he sees the Goblin Slayer start entertain herself using Lin, which confuses him. He gets shocked to see all that, as he wonders if the Goblin Slayer is a woman, and how she could be with a goblin. But then suddenly, Xizer notices a goblin behind him, coming at him fast with killing intent, so he screams no as the goblin attacks him. After some time, the goblins transport the dead bodies back inside their settlement, while Lin tells the Goblin Slayer that this is a goblin den. She keeps following and she'll face the consequences, but the Slayer tells him she said she wanted to see how strong he is, and as for the consequences, as long as he can handle them, it's fine. Then Lin asks her who exactly she is, and what's that strange power, how she can control his subordinates and even him. At that, the Goblin Slayer asks if she tells him everything, if he'll agree to let her follow him. Lin tells her that depends on what she says. Then the Slayer says that she's a descendant of the Goblin King, which shocks Lin as he didn't expect to hear something like that. He asks the Goblin Slayer if she's a descendant of the Goblin King, but why she looks just like a human. The Slayer replies that maybe it's because her mother was human, and she just happens to be the offspring of the Goblin King, from among the group of goblins that break her mother. She explains that logically, the higher the rank of a goblin, the harder it is to have offspring, but she managed to survive and is healthy. And about a decade ago, she personally killed the Goblin King who tried to force himself. The Goblin Slayer continues that after she devoured him completely, she gained the power of the king's blood, which allows her to control goblins. So she slaughtered the entire goblin dungeon, and giggles. Hearing all that, Lin confusedly asks if she can control them because of the power of the king's blood. The Slayer says she added her blood to the weapon forging, so once they're hit, it's like being implanted with a suicide gene. They can't disobey her, so naturally they're under her control. Then she excitedly adds that she became a Goblin Slayer because she hates goblins, and fun with strong goblins before killing them is a personal interest. After that, Lin thinks no wonder her personality is so twisted. He almost feels sorry for her, Also, she's a natural weapon against goblins. If she becomes an enemy, it won't be good for him. That's why he says that it seems they have something in common. And so, he tells her to join him. At that, the Slayer laughs, saying this is interesting. She thought he was afraid of her. So she planned to use some tricks to control him, but it seems that's not necessary, which annoys Lin. Then the Slayer puts her helmet back on and proceeds to leave, telling Lin to forget it. The situation in Bright Town is complicated now. She can go back and be her spy. It's more interesting. Lin gets surprised to hear that and asks if she's actually that kind. Goblin Slayer replies it's because he's her thing now. Naturally, she has to protect him first, which annoys Lin even more. After that, he returns to the Goblin Den and finds that his level and stats have increased and he has gained new powerful skills and titles, with an overall power of 2,200. Lin thinks with a smile, as expected of a woman with the king's blood, she gave him quite a few stat points. Right then, he hears Xizer surprisedly calling someone cousin and saying he's still alive, while both of them are tied up. Xizer laughs and tells Loder to look at him, as he's definitely going to disgrace their family. No wonder the Sword Saint didn't want to come and save him herself. However, Loder calls him an idiot and tells him with a smug look on his face to take a look at the pot over there. He'll die before him, and giggles. At that moment, a goblin lifts Xizer up and Xizer frightenedly asks what he's doing. After that, the goblin takes him toward the pot, while Xizer screams, begging him not to kill him. He shouts saying that he's a noble, so he can give them women, lots of women. Right then, Loder tells the goblin to stop. He wants to see his leader. Hearing that, Lin sounds surprised as he walks toward him, calling him a useless, and tells him that he hasn't spoken for so long. And now he opens his mouth. Loder tells him to release Xizer, and he can agree to any of his requests. Hearing that, Xizer starts crying with happiness. He tells Loder that he was wrong earlier. He shouldn't have talked down to him, and keeps saying that he's the dog. Lin goes up to Loder and giggles as he asks he's a prisoner and if he's trying to bargain with him. But then, Loder tells him with a crazy look on his face to cut off one of Xizer's legs and let him go. He'll bring the news of him being alive back to the family, and they'll definitely send more people to rescue him. He adds that he can devour more strong people, and it's best not to let that Sword Saint dog go either, which shocks Xizer. Loder acts like a lunatic, as he repeatedly says that they all deserve to die, and he'll kill them. Seeing that, Lin gladly says it looks like he's serious, and he agrees. Then Loder excitedly continues laughing and Lin steps back. At that moment, Leah worriedly tells him that if they let Xizer go, their position will be exposed. However, Lin tells her with a smile not to worry, as he asks if she doesn't trust him. The next day at Bright Town, an adventurer hurriedly goes to the tavern and starts shouting saying it's over, they're done for. The bartender asks what's over and tells him not to get so worked up. Then the adventurer worriedly says he just saw Xizer. He lost a leg and was riding a carnivorous horse toward the royal city. The other adventurers there get terrified to hear that and ask how that's possible if Xizer and the others failed. The mysterious person from before asks if the Grey Hats and the Blizzard heroes were all wiped out, if he's the only one left. Right then, the Goblin Slayer enters the tavern saying yes, they're all dead, only Xizer is still alive. The Slayer sits at a table and orders a drink, while the adventurer who came in with the bad news asks her if she took part in that battle, and the Slayer says yes. Then the mysterious person asks her about the goblins, and the Goblin Slayer tells him hundreds of large goblins, and even mutated ones, they were all taken care of by her. The other adventurers get shocked to hear that, while the mysterious person laughs out loud and says, as expected of the Goblin Slayer. The next day, at the Lionheart capital, the Earl furiously calls Xizer a useless thing, and tells him to get out as he has brought shame to the family. But Xizer desperately tells his father to let him explain, as those goblins are not only powerful but also very intelligent. They are no match for them. He adds that even the Grey Hats are all dead, and by the way, cousin Loder is still alive. Hearing that, Earl Pheromone gets even more infuriated, so then he gets up from his chair and yells at his son, telling him he still has the nerve to talk like that. The eldest sons of two families were defeated by the goblins, and now people outside are laughing at them. At that moment, Xizer wet his pants, so he grovels on the floor, restlessly calling his father, and telling him that he's sorry, while the other nobles disappointedly cover their nose because of the stinking smell. Xizer acts crazy as he thinks about Lin and cries, saying it's terrible, that goblin is so scary, so scary. At that, Pheromone shouts at him, telling him that he's a disgrace to him, and orders the guards to drag him out. However, right then, Earl Stanman enters the courtroom, calling Earl Pheromone and telling him with a smile that there's no need to be so angry. Looking at Xizer's sorry state, he explains to Pheromone that he wants to join hands with him to wash away the shame of his family. Pheromone asks what's the meaning, if he doesn't know that His Majesty has ordered that the soldiers of nobles above the rank of Viscount must be on standby at all time and cannot be mobilized at will. Besides, he says that Your Majesty has already sent a message to the Sword Saint, so he asks if there's any need for them. Hearing that, Stanman laughs a bit and tells him that his vision is still too small, as if the Sword Saint were to solve all the problems. His Majesty would only believe that their two families were incompetent. He asks Pheromone if he wants this, which stupefies him, so then, Stanman tells him with a smile that if he wants His Majesty to agree, he just needs to let his son go to His Majesty to report the situation of the goblins. By then, if everyone mobilizes 1,000 soldiers, even the Goblin Overlord will have to be defeated by him. It makes the other nobles there nervous, and they discuss it among themselves. Earl Pheromone also thinks about it. Then he tells Stanman, well, not to think that he doesn't know what he's up to, and looking at Xizer, he irritatedly adds to let this rubbish follow him to see the king. A few days later, at Lin's Goblin Den, Loader screams out loud, which hurts the goblin soldier's ears. Then Loader calms down a bit as he tries to look at the broken apple on his head and surprisedly tries to ask if it got hit. He shouts at Lin, calling him a monster as he keeps trembling in fear, while Lin stands in front of him holding a gun and his subordinates stand beside him. Lin looks at the gun and gladly says he didn't expect that this homemade pistol was so useful, except that it consumed a bit of gunpowder, and Kasana amazedly tells him he's awesome, she wants to fight him too. Then she wraps her arms around his shoulders, desperately telling him to teach her, and Lin tells her he'll teach. But at that moment, Goblin Dai hurriedly enters the cave and goes up to Lin telling him that a large number of human troops have gathered in Bright Town, and fully armed. Goblin Shan tells Lin that he also noticed a lot of goblins approaching, and it looks like they're from the Beast King tribe. However, that doesn't worry Lin as he says with a smile that it looks like the fun is about to begin. At the Beast King tribe's village, the Beast Goblin from before nervously tells his boss that the human army came to snatch the ring. It was already very difficult for him to escape back. Immediately, he gets hit by a powerful magic attack by the king, which pierces his chest and kills him, as the king calls him a waste. Then he roars and furiously orders the other goblins to gather, eat humans, and get the ring back, and the goblins all get prepared to fight. Meanwhile, the two Lord of Lionheart Kingdom, Lord Pheromone and Lord Stanman reach Bright Town with their huge army, and the new mayor along with other town representatives respectfully welcome them to their town. Stanman asks where the Sword Saint is, then the shady adventurer from before comes and tells him that the Sword Master has left for something, and asks so what they two earls are doing with all this fanfare. Stanman annoyedly tells him, since the saint isn't there, there's no need to waste his breath on him, and the adventurer furiously says he's a dragon slayer, a brave warrior who fought alongside the Sword Master. So he asks how dare he looks down on him. At that, Stanman nervously says he understands, and tells him to excuse him, as they're there to defeat the goblins. But then, the adventurer notices something moving fast on the roof and worriedly asks, weird, what the hell that is. After that, the soldiers find a horde of goblins rushing at them at once, and terrifiedly says oh no, it's goblins. They asks if there aren't heavily guarded city walls, then how the goblins got in. Earl Pheromone infuriatedly shouts goddamn goblins, they are seeking their own death, as he takes out his sword. He orders his soldiers to pivot towards the goblins and charge. He calls the soldiers brave lions of the empire and tells them to kill them all as he charges forward on his horse. Then, Pheromone starts cutting down the goblins and killing them one after another. The soldiers also manage to strike down the goblins without much effort. The shady adventurer that accompanied the Saintess to the Dragon Island also manages to kill the goblins using his magic. Meanwhile, Lin looks at all that from a distance and smiles, saying that the scene is more lively than he expected. After a while, Pheromone drags his bloody sword on the ground, as the goblins around them are dead, and he says they are just low-level trash after all, so he asks what threat they can add up to. He looks to the back and finds his soldiers also finishing up the leftover goblins and says, if they continue like this, the battle should be over in less than an hour. But then, suddenly, a bunch of soldiers and a horse go flying above his head and fall to the ground behind him, getting crushed in an instant. Lin also gets startled by that, as a huge terrifying monster enters through the city gate, holding the soldiers of the kingdom with his tentacles. As the monster approaches closer, it can be seen that the soldiers had to suffer a horrifying demise. Then the monster roars at Lord Pheromone and the other humans, and the system reports that it's the Beast Goblin King, level 79, with titles like King of Beasts, skills like Beast King's Roar, incredibly high stats, and an overall strength of about 3,000. Seeing that, Lin worriedly wonders what on earth this guy is and how he is so powerful, but he thinks he also looks really disgusting. While Lord Stanman hurriedly tells the soldiers to fall back quickly, and the soldiers try their best to keep their distance from the Goblin King, aiming their weapons at him. Stanman frustratedly asks what that thing is. If it's an overlord species, Pheromone says he's not sure, and they should let the family members deal with it. Right then, Lorna, Loder's sister, arrives there along with her comrades and calls her father, telling him that they will lure that guy away, and the soldiers can take care of the rest. As she and her comrade head toward the Goblin King, Stanman tells her to be cautious, to not end up becoming a loser like her brother Loder, and Lorna says yes sir. After that, she rushes toward the monster, holding her big lance in hand, and one of the mages of her party starts charging his magic. He shouts at the monster to have a taste of this, as he shoots a powerful fireball at the Goblin King, which hits him right on the face. However, it doesn't do much damage to the monster, and he gets even more furious. Then he starts moving toward the adventurers fast, while Lorna runs outside the town along with her comrades, telling them quickly to lure him out of the city. Seeing that, Lin worriedly thinks not good. If they run any further in that direction and meet his people, it'll be a big pain. So then, he gets on his dragon companion and flies up to see how it plays out. Then he seems a bit relieved to find the Goblin King catching up to the adventurers fast. Looking at Lorna, Lin disappointedly thinks, what a pity, this girl with the golden ponytail is in greater danger than she realizes. Sometime later, half of Lorna's comrades are dead and badly decapitated, while the Goblin King still remains standing, without sustaining any significant injuries. One adventurer infuriatedly says, just a mere goblin, and tells him that his teeth shall be the first trophy they will take from him. Another adventurer tells him not to let up and continue to divert its attention, as they must give Lorna a chance to launch a fatal strike. At that moment, the Goblin King smashes at the ground where Lorna is standing, and Lorna quickly moves away from there right before he could hit her. As she lands on her feet, holding her big lance in hand, she keeps facing the monster, thinking she's a role model of the academy, so she must win in this actual battle. So then, Lorna rushes straight at the monster, aiming her lance at him, and uses her advanced martial technique, Evil Smashing Holy Lance, which hits the Beast Goblin King on the dead center of his chest and badly hurts him. Seeing that, Lin thinks this ponytail girl only has a total combined stat of 1,700, whilst the rest are around 1,000 or so. The fact that they can hold up till now is quite interesting. After that, the Goblin King furiously shouts at Lorna, calling her a damn woman, and asks how dare she sneak attacks him. Immediately, he starts sipping in a lot of energy from around him with his mouth, and Lin gets frightened realizing what it's planning to do. Then, the Goblin King lets out a loud screeching noise, which spreads throughout the area as it uses its skill, Beast King's Roar. The roar even reaches Lin and the dragon and aggravates them. Lin covers his ears frustratedly thinking, such powerful sound waves, the ferocity, it's beyond imagination. Then the dragon, Zio Huan, starts acting strange, so Lin tells her to calm down. In a matter of seconds, the adventurers below die from internal injuries due to the loud screech, and only Lorna remains, but badly hurt. So, looking at the Beast Goblin King, she stutteringly questions why this is happening, how there can be such a powerful goblin. Lorna says it's completely impossible to handle and calls for her father, as the monster approaches her with intense killing intent. Then, as the Goblin King gets to her, Lorna calls for someone to save her, and screams out loud, which can be heard from a long distance. Hearing that, her father calls for her and anxiously says something must have happened to them. However, the soldiers tell him that as the commander, they can't afford to lose him now. Right then, the shady adventurer shouts at them all to calm down and tells them to look over there. He trembling points his finger at the road heading out of the city toward the forest, and asks what that is, as he sees the Goblin King heading back toward the city. Then, as the monster gets closer to them, they notice Lorna held tightly by its tentacles, looking completely decimated. Lord Stanman gets shocked to see that and furiously rushes toward the Goblin King, calling him a damn goblin, and tells him to give him back his daughter. At that, Lord Pheromone shouts at him, telling him to wait, as they're about to win. But Stanman doesn't listen and lunges at the monster with all of his strength. The Goblin King tries to move forward and attack. Right then, Stanman stops his movement by putting his shield ahead of him and proceeds to swing his sword at him. But before he could land the attack, the Beast Goblin King quickly swings his arm at him and smashes him right into the ground. Stanman gets badly hurt because of that and falls unconscious. Immediately, the soldiers go up to the monster and start attacking him with their spears. Some soldiers put a shield ahead while the others try their best to wound the monster, keeping their distance from him. At that moment, Lord Pheromone frustratedly calls the wandering hero and tells him, "Quick, to deal the finishing blow." The adventurer starts charging up a magic attack, using as much magic energy as he can muster, thinking he's going all out. As he finishes charging up his high-level magic energy sphere, he rushes forward and jumps on one of the soldiers' shield to thrust himself up. Then, the hero throws the magic sphere right at the Beast Goblin King's face, and it causes an enormous explosion. Seeing that, all the remaining goblins that came with the Goblin King frightenedly run away from there. After a while, as the smoke from the explosion dissipates, the hero seems really exhausted and keeps looking at the Goblin King as his upper body completely melted due to the explosion. Seeing that, the hero's body trembles with excitement, and then he starts laughing out loud and shouts victory. He looks at Pheromone and proudly announces that he's truly an epic-level adventurer now. However, Lord Pheromone and the remaining soldier frightenedly look behind the hero, as new flesh starts growing back from the place where the Beast Goblin King's flesh melted, and he looks enraged. The hero stands there shocked, realizing what's happening, but before he could react to that, the monster brings his mouth close to him and cuts off the adventurer's upper body clean in one bite. Then, as it feasts on the body, he looks at Lord Pheromone and the remaining soldier with murderous eyes, which terrifies them. In the meantime, Lin continues flying above them, sitting on Xiao Huan, and tells her to get closer. Seeing what's happening with the Goblin King's body, he worriedly wonders if this guy is already starting to evolve. In a matter of seconds, the monster's body completely changes into a new form as the system reports that it's a level 80 brutal goblin. And Lin gets shocked to find that his overall strength has actually reached 3,100, so he wonders if this is what an overlord level looks like. Then, the monster grabs Stanman and proceeds to eat him while he tries to say something. And Lin thinks, although it just evolved, the overall combat power won't increase too much in a short time. But it's already a terrible existence. After that, as the brutal goblin puts Stanman in his mouth and starts chomping on him, Lin understands that at this rate of devouring, the human race will inevitably be defeated there. He realizes that all the experience points are being devoured by this guy, and worriedly wonders what his tribe will eat when the time comes, so he has to take action to help suppress this brutality. Right then, the brutal goblin steps on one of his subordinates, and the other goblins terrifiedly keep telling him that they're not running anymore. After that, the brutal goblin tells all of them to go, as whoever dares to take half a step back, this'll be their end, and all of his subordinates start rushing toward Pheromone and the rest of the soldiers. They furiously shout together, charge, and try to go up to the humans as fast as they can to attack them. Seeing that, Lord Pheromone hurriedly orders the soldiers to quickly retreat to the town and close the city gates, as they all frightenedly run back inside the city. Seeing that, the brutal king also runs ahead faster along with his goblin subordinates, frustratedly saying that they absolutely mustn't let them leave, and the goblins shout, charge. Meanwhile, Lin looks at all that from above and surprisedly wonders if they all ran into the city. Then he looks back with a cunning smile on his face and whistles loudly, which can be heard from the forest near the city. Hearing that, his goblin soldiers hurriedly come out of the forest and rush toward where the battle took place, saying the boss instructed them to bring back all the corpses, so to be quick with their hands and feet. But right then, Lin notices a bright light plowing through the forest at a tremendous speed and moving toward the city. As it gets closer, he notices multiple bright lights and worriedly wonders if it could be that that person is back. So then, Lin hurriedly flies down, ordering his soldiers to seize the time and retreat, and the goblin soldiers say, "Yes, sir," as they take whatever they can and quickly escape from there. Moments later, inside the city, the brutal goblin manages to corner Pheromone and shouts at him, telling him to spit it out and he'll make them old bastards happy. Pheromone frustratedly tells him that he doesn't have what it wants, and to kill him if it wants. He calls them lowly beasts, as they don't deserve to negotiate with him. The brutal goblin infuriatedly asks if he doesn't have it. Then he lunges at Pheromone and tightly grabs hold of him, which severely hurts him. The monster brings the Earl close to his face and asks him with a furious look on his face what he means if he didn't pick up the ring, while Earl Pheromone finds it hard to speak. Right at that moment, the bright light comes straight at the brutal goblin and pierces him in the chest, which deeply wounds him. Immediately, a sword comes down from above and falls on the ground, breaking it, while the Goblin King loses his foot and falls on his back, confusedly asking, "Who?" Then, the sword saintess comes down and stands on the hand of the sword, looking down on the monster with a terrifying look in her eyes. The brutal goblin gets startled by that, and after that, the weapon that hit him comes back the way it came from, piercing through his face, which hurts the monster even more. The sphere returns back to its wielder, Marshall, one of the members of the legendary team, as he grabs it and intimidatingly looks at the brutal goblin. Then he looks back, as his comrade Austin amusedly asks if they really need to bully a goblin like that, while Emma stands there holding her bow and arrow. Seeing all of them, Lord Pheromone excitedly says the Sword Saint Sama, she has finally arrived, and the members of the Hunter Guild. By that time, it starts to get dawn, and looking at the Saintess and the others from a distance, Lin thinks he didn't expect the Hunters group to arrive at this time. He was planning to try and suppress this brutal goblin, but it seems he doesn't need to take action now. Right then, the brutal goblin looks really furious and grabs hold of one of his own minions. He crushes him and puts him into his mouth as he starts eating him to replenish his strength. The monster activates his skill, Brutal Nature, and his body starts regenerating. The system says that Devourkin can perform a high-efficiency heal. At that, Lin surprisedly wonders if he has this kind of talent too, however. Judging from the severity of its wounds, it'll take some time to fully recover, but he thinks with a smile that this is even better. Right then, Marshall asks the Saintess, this guy, if he can't die even after piercing his neck and chest. The Saintess draws out her sword saying, after all, it's a Lord-class enemy. He can be killed with another strike now. The brutal goblin gets startled to find the Saintess take out her sword, and worriedly tells her to wait. He desperately tells her that he's just a simple goblin. He doesn't want to fight, so as long as they let him return to the Great Tomb, he guarantees the goblins won't come again. The Saintess surprisedly asks if he's from the Great Tomb. The Goblin King says that's right, and pointing at Pheromone, he explains it's all because this guy picked up this item that was supposed to belong to them. Hearing that, Lord Pheromone shouts saying, nonsense, and tells the brutal goblin, he swears in the name of the Count that he never steals things from low-level trash mobs like them. The Saintess seems skeptical about it and says something's wrong. It's him, it has to be him, that troublesome guy. Austin asks who, if she isn't talking about the goblin before them. The Saintess says this guy claims to be from Great Tomb, which is hundreds or thousands of miles from there. But attacking Bright Town is something only goblins living in the surroundings would do. At that, Emma asks, so if she's saying that guy used a trick to lure him, hoping to see them both be severely wounded. Marshall stutteringly asks if a goblin is even capable of something like that. Right then, Pheromone furiously yells at them saying he doesn't care about any of that. He says that Stanmone and the wandering hero both died at his hands, so they can't let him return. Hearing that, Austin steps forward, holding his large shield in hand and excitedly telling everyone, then to let him deal with it, which terrifies the brutal goblin. But right at that moment, a strong whirlwind comes at them out of nowhere, which startles everyone. Then the whirlwind passes between the monster and the humans, forcing them to move farther away from each other. After that, as the whirlwind moves toward the Sword Saintess, the brutal goblin takes the opportunity to run away from there and escape as fast as possible. Then the Saintess looks up and gets shocked to see a flying dragon above the city and a goblin standing on it. While Lin thinks that the brutal goblin is still useful to him for devouring. What a pity if he dies at the hands of these guys. So, he decides with a smile to create some trouble for him to escape, so he can find time to strike when he's weak. Then Lin tells Zio Huan that they should go after the brutal goblin. Immediately, the dragon turns around and starts flying toward the Beast Goblin King. However, seeing that, the Saintess infuriatedly says she won't let him escape, as she uses her magic to manipulate the wind and starts floating. Then she uses the wind to thrust herself at Lin and the dragon. And seeing that, Lin worriedly asks if it's wind manipulation. As the Saintess moves toward Lin fast, she surprisedly wonders how this is possible, if it's just a small goblin. Then she says she guesses it has to be him and proceeds to swing her sword at him, charging it up with magic and using her skill, Steel Tempest. It sends out a bunch of large energy slashes straight at Lin and the dragon, which frightens Lin, and he hurriedly tells Zio Huan to dodge it. Immediately, Zio Huan moves out of the way, barely dodging one of the slashes, which then divides up a mountain in front of them in half. Seeing that, Lin gladly thinks that fortunately, He escaped the attack, and it would be hard to survive if he was hit. While the Saintess stands there, looking at Lin and the dragon flying away from there. She infuriatedly shouts at him, telling Lin that no matter where he escapes, she won't let him go. She'll be sure to kill him with her own hands. At that, Lin looks back and says with a smile, "This crazy woman is strong as hell. He'll figure out a way to mess with her when the opportunity comes." Sometime later, the brutal goblin continues to run away from Bright Town as fast as he can, breaking through everything in his path. He frustratedly thinks he has got to find a cave to hide in first, as those bastards will be sniffing his trail soon. But then, he finds himself in front of Lin's goblin cave. The brutal goblin carefully sniffs the place and finds that there's another goblin scent. Then he recalls the beast goblin that previously came there telling him that this place was raided by human soldiers and the magic ring is in their possession. And the Earl saying that he swears on his count's name he has never stolen anything from them low-level trash mobs. The brutal goblin realizes what's happening and infuriatedly says he gets it now. This bastard wants to hog the magic ring. He calls him a damn bastard as he dares to deceive him and says that the item must still be there. So then, the brutal goblin rushes forward and tries to break through the entrance of the goblin cave, furiously calling the people inside bastards and telling them to get the hell out there. Hearing the rumble above, Goblin Yu, who's with Elf Leah and Kasana, frightenedly asks what should they do if he's going to break in. Kasana frustratedly says, "Damn it, they'll just go out and take care of him." But Leah stops her, telling her that the boss ordered them to never reveal themselves and never go out. Right then, the Goblin Slayer walks up to them and carefully tells them not to worry, as she trusts Lin Tian. He definitely won't let anything happen to them. At that moment, outside the cave, the brutal goblin suddenly hears something coming at him from behind and hurriedly looks back, asking who's there. Then the monster sees Lin on top of Xiao Huan, so he drops down and prepares to get to him, while Lin tells him he knew he'd come there, not bad at running away. But he adds with a smile that he ain't escaping his hunting grounds, as Xiao Huan breathes intense flames straight at the brutal goblin. The flames land a direct hit on the Beast Goblin King, and he tries his best to block the flames by putting his arms in front of him. Right then, Lin aims his crossbow at him and proceeds to shoot. The brutal goblin notices that and immediately moves away from there. He starts dashing at a tremendous speed, dodging all of his attacks, while trying to close the gap between them. After that, as the brutal goblin manages to get close to Xiao Huan, he hits her with a powerful punch and makes her fall over. Then, he notices Lin walking toward him and something shining brightly on his hand. But as Lin gets closer, the brutal goblin gets shocked to find that it's the magic ring, and he questions how it could be in this guy's hands. The brutal goblin calls him a lowly trash and furiously tells him so it was he who stole his magic ring, and asks to hand it over. Lin raises his hand, asking if he's talking about this, but what if he doesn't want to give it back? Hearing that, the brutal goblin frustratedly says, "Damn it," and rushes toward him using all of his strength. As he reaches up to Lin, he tries to punch Lin with a massive amount of force. However, Lin moves away from there at the last moment and dodges the attack. Lin shows up at a bit of a distance from the brutal goblin and mockingly asks him that with his clumsy body, how he could possibly keep up with him. After that, he lunges up and shows up behind the brutal goblin in an instant, and before the brutal goblin could do anything, Lin swings a blade at him, severely wounding him. Immediately, the system notifies Lin, saying acquired transcendent skill, Shrieking Howl. Then the brutal goblin lets out a loud roar as he bleeds profusely, and Lin rubs blood off of his face, looking at the monster with intense killing intent. After that, he activates his newly acquired skill and shoots it straight at the brutal goblin, sending out a huge energy beam, which lands a direct hit on the monster. Getting hit by such a powerful attack, the brutal goblin gets badly hurt and falls to the ground. Then Lin thinks with a smile he was just trying his luck, but he didn't expect to actually get this skill. Then, all of a sudden, the brutal goblin punches Lin in the gut with a tremendous amount of force and throws him back far. Right as Lin bounces off the ground, the brutal goblin rushes up to him and hits him hard by concentrating his bloodstream in front of him. Not giving him even a moment to breathe, the brutal goblin concentrates his bloodstream in his fist and punches him on his head. Lin tries to block the hit by putting his arms above him, but the ground breaks beneath him. At that moment, the system notifies him, saying brutal goblin overall strength, 2,700. Lin irritatedly thinks what a strong force. Fortunately, he's seriously injured now, and his strength has been weakened a lot in the previous fight with the hunter group. while the brutal goblin frustratedly wonders if he can withstand his attack, as it seems that the Yu family's food intake is getting stronger and stronger. Right then, Lin hits him in the chest with a really powerful energy ball using one of his hands, throwing him back hard. At that, the brutal goblin furiously says, "Impossible, there's no way he can't beat one," and then he falls to the ground unconscious, unable to move anymore. Lin tells him that there's no food there to replenish him, and if he is hit in the vitals, he'll definitely die. But if he weren't so useful, he would have stabbed him in the heart just now. After that, he takes the brutal goblin's unconscious body back to his goblin cave, and tells the goblin slayer that this is left to her. The slayer asks what he wants to do. If he doesn't want to seal his soul into the ring to increase his strength. After all, the plan has been successful. But Lin says the plan went wrong. The Sword Saints Hunter group intervened, and he was exposed. Lin explains that among them is a man named Marshall, who has the ability to escape into the earth. He can find them easily by burrowing underground. So, the Goblin Slayer asks what he's going to do. Looking at the brutal goblin, Lin asks if this guy isn't from the Great Tomb. He explains to the Slayer that it'd be better to use his background and let the people from the Great Tomb kill those guys. Hearing that, the Slayer asks if this isn't too dangerous, as it's best not to get involved with the guys in the Great Tomb. However, Lin says this is the best way. He puts the magic ring on the monster's hand and tells the Slayer that she must tell him to inform the people of the Great Tomb and offer the ring to them, so they can avenge their cruelty. At that, the Slayer says there's really nothing she can do about him and tells him okay, then she'll do as he says. As he removes gloves from one of his hands and cuts the hand using a knife, she then pours her blood on the brutal goblin while chanting a magic spell. And the Slayer tells the brutal goblin to stand up. Immediately, the brutal goblin gets back on his feet and tells her that her humble servant is more brilliant than his master. He also says he must complete the king's command, as he heads back to the Great Tomb to do as instructed. Later that night, the goblins in Lin's Goblin Cave are enjoying a feast around a bonfire, eating the human soldiers they brought back from the battlefield in front of Bright Town. Meanwhile, the system notifies Lin that he has accumulated 300 life points. As he's checking the system standing at a corner, he finds something that is able to summon a 6th level monster that completely obeys his orders, and wonders if he should exchange this to protect himself. But then, he thinks he should forget it, as the 6th level monster is about the same strength as the brutal goblin. And even if 3 brutal beasts came, they might not be able to defeat the Sword Saint. So he looks through more items, believing it's better to choose some substantial skills to improve himself. First, Distortion Fusion. It can seize the opponent's parts and fuse them with their own. Each part can gain a certain attribute increase, but cannot obtain the opponent's innate skills. It'll not affect their own form. Next, Blood of Ruined. It has a ruined effect, which invalidates the opponent's sacred abilities and weakens all of the opponent's attributes. Also, the damage caused to the target of the ruined effect is higher. Lin thinks Distortion Fusion doesn't look very strong, but if it is combined with his Gene Engulfment ability, it'll be much more powerful. For example, the wings of a fusion dragon, then he can devour its flight skills. Or he guesses that he can merge with Medusa's eyes and devour her petrification ability. However, Lin understands that the ruined blood seems to be the only way to counter the holy system. Although Distortion Fusion is good, there's no monster that he can fuse with right now, so he decides to forget it, and just choose Blood of Ruined as he presses on it. Immediately, Lin obtains the skill, and the system notifies him that the exchange of ruined blood was successful. Congratulations to him for obtaining the life miracle effect. 300 life points are returned. Lin gets surprised to see that. Then he excitedly tells the system that he loves it so much. If it were a person, if it were a woman, he'd never treat it unfairly, which confuses the other goblins. After that, Lin successfully exchanges the points for the Distortion Fusion skill, and says it can just solve the restrictive problem of the goblin's devouring gene, so 2 wishes, 1 fulfillment. Right then, he hears Kasana call him boss, and he turns around, and immediately, Kasana grabs his hands, looking excited, and Yu asks what's wrong with him, to which Lin nervously laughs and says nothing. However, seeing him act like that, Yu comes to some kind of conclusion. Then, she too holds him with one hand and her clothes with another, bashfully asking if he wants that.